Chapter 2869. Puppet Maze. Yi Xian nodded in agreement, then threw a pile of spirit stones to that person before walking inside. The Bloody Seven Nights didn't have any rules for entering. As long as you wanted to go in and play, anyone could go in. However, it wasn't that simple to enter the real Bloody Seven Nights secret realm. There were almost no people in the outer Bloody Seven Nights. After all, those who could come here were all here for the special things in the secret realm. Not long after Yi Xian entered, an attendant arrived in front of him. "Hello, sir. May I ask if this is your first time coming to our Bloody Seven Nights?" The attendant's appearance was very strange. He had the head of a wolf, but the body of a bullfrog. As for his eyes, they were compound eyes. This should be the subsidiary race of the giant Bai Meng, the thousand-eyed wolf frog race. Yi Xian thought to himself, the name of the thousand-eyed wolf frog race is quite vivid. Isn't compound eyes just like 1,000 eyes? And the wolf head frog body, isn't that the wolf frog? Of course, Yi Xian's gaze didn't linger on the thousand-eyed wolf frog clan attendant for too long. Instead, he said, "This is my first time here. So that's how it is. Then, please follow me to apply for the identity rune." Identity rune? What's that? Yi Xian asked in confusion. "Oh, dear customer, you might not know, but in my Bloody Seven Nights, there are a total of 7 entertainment areas, and in each area, there is a corresponding identification rune. As for the way to handle it, it is very simple. You only need to show your wealth, and you can rest assured that my Bloody Seven Nights has a perfect reputation. It can be said that as long as you are our guest, we will definitely protect your privacy and safety." Although the thousand-eyed wolf frog clan attendant wasn't strong, his tone was neither servile nor overbearing. It was obvious that he would often encounter experts here. As for Yi Xian's high-level Divine Emperor realm cultivation, he could only be considered to be above average in the Bloody Seven Nights. Since he was here to relax, Yi Xian naturally wouldn't cause trouble. He directly followed the thousand-eyed wolf frog to the other side. Very quickly, Yi Xian's identification rune was processed. Yi Xian only displayed 1,000,000 spirit stones and obtained the authority to enter the first and second regions. After all, Yi Xian was only here to relax. He wouldn't really stay here to entertain himself for too long. After the identity rune was processed, Yi Xian was directly welcomed into a teleportation formation. This was the entrance to the Bloody Seven Nights secret realm. However, when Yi Xian walked into the first region, he realized how extravagant the Bloody Seven Nights was. The area that Yi Xian had entered was only the lowest level of the first region, but the area it occupied was already equivalent to a realm. Moreover, there were countless pavilions and pavilions. Everyone who entered would be assigned to a palace, and within the palace, there were 1,000 servants. Of course, the monthly fee of 100,000 spirit stones was not something that ordinary people could easily accept. Of course, if someone was willing to add 1,000,000 spirit stones, then the lives of these 1,000 servants could be handed over to their master. These servants were specially nurtured by the Bloody Seven Nights. They could be considered to be one of the subsidiary races of the Bloody Seven Nights. Moreover, each of them had taken the face-preserving pill refined by the Bloody Seven Nights. This face-preserving pill not only made these servants look handsome, but it was also a method of control. It could be said that none of the servants of the Bloody Seven Nights had any way of leaving this secret realm. Once they left, the only thing that awaited them would be their bodies exploding and dying. Of course, as long as you paid the corresponding price, then even if you wanted servants of any race, the Bloody Seven Nights would be able to get them. Yi Xian didn't care about these servants. After accepting his own hall, Yi Xian walked out. In the Bloody Seven Nights, all the servants wore the same clothes. Of course, in their own halls, the master could let the servants change into the clothes they liked according to their own preferences. Outside, they could only wear the same clothes. The reason for this was to make it easier to distinguish their identities. In other words, as long as they weren't wearing servant clothes, they were definitely guests. Bet. Without a doubt, it was an essential item in every entertainment venue, and it was the same in the Bloody Seven Nights. Moreover, here, you can also set the stakes according to your own wishes. At this moment, Yi Xian walked into a casino called the Treasure Gathering Pavilion. The Treasure Gathering Pavilion was extremely large, and there were many tricks to play. Other than the regular dice, 9 and so on, there were also many people who wanted to play new games. In any case, as long as you were willing, you could gamble however you wanted. At this moment, Yi Xian was standing on a gambling platform. The banker here had opened a bet that was rather interesting to Yi Xian. This guy had actually created several mini mazes. There were several puppets in this maze, and the requirements of the bet were very simple. Whoever could control their own mini puppet and reach the end first would be considered to have won, and all the bets would belong to them. The banker would not personally participate in the bet. After all, he was the one who created the maze. Even if he wanted to participate, no one would be willing to play with him. As for driving the little person, it could only be done with spiritual will. Therefore, the requirements for the fine control of spiritual will were extremely high. The maze was irregular and constantly changing. According to the dealer, his maze contained a total of 9,999 types of random changes, and it was happening at any time. Therefore, at the same time, it also tested the level of control the gamblers had over the formation. It could be said that if one wanted to win, not only would one have to have a certain foundation in formations, one would also have to have an extremely powerful spiritual will. What Yi Xian saw was that most of the people surrounding this place were array masters. Because of this bet, only array masters would dare to challenge it. If it was anyone else, even if their spiritual will was incomparably strong, they would only be trapped if they didn't understand formations. Come, place your bets. 10,000 spirit stones for 9 positions. Who else wants to sign up? Another round of gambling began. Yi Xian watched the round and had the idea of giving it a try. At this moment, he casually threw down 10,000 spirit stones and stood beside a puppet. Yo, there's a newcomer. I've never seen you before. Beside Yi Xian, a shape-shifted divine beast looked at Yi Xian and said with a smile. Yi Xian also smiled and said indifferently, I only came today. Haha, newcomer, you have to be careful. This puppet maze isn't as simple as you think. Whether it's simple or not, we'll only know after we try. Yi Xian said indifferently. In fact, Yi Xian was quite confident in his own abilities. In any case, Yi Xian was also an array master, a divine talisman master, and a restriction master. He was much stronger than these simple array masters, so Yi Xian was confident that he could defeat them. The 9 of them quickly gathered together, and the 90,000 spirit stones were all kept by the banker. The banker did not stand on ceremony and directly took away 5,000 spirit stones. The reason he created this puppet maze was naturally to obtain benefits. Otherwise, why would he open a casino? Chapter 2870. Refining Star Sand. The banker had already explained the basic operation method. Moreover, even if there was no need to explain it, one would be able to understand it after watching it once. Therefore, at this moment, with a shout, everyone used their spiritual will to control their puppets and began to walk forward. Yi Xian covered the entire maze with his spiritual will as he carefully observed the changes in order to find the path the puppet would take. At the same time, he had to think of a way to stop the interference of the other 8 people's spiritual will. Actually, this puppet maze could already be considered a very gentle gambling platform. The 9 people's spiritual wills would not attack others. However, when the 9 spiritual wills were gathered in this small maze, it was inevitable that they would affect each other. Therefore, everyone had to control the power of their spiritual will at all times to prevent it from being disturbed. After all, once one's spiritual will was disturbed, it would be even more difficult to control it. For example, at this moment, the person who was with Yi Xian wasn't strong enough to control his spiritual will. At this moment, he was actually being disturbed by the other 8 people's spiritual will. He couldn't even drive the puppet. Yi Xian's spiritual will completely enveloped the tiny puppet and used it to construct a complete defense around it. Out of the 9 people, only 4 were able to do this. However, there were also people who took a different path. At this moment, there was one person who had turned his spiritual will into a tentacle and wrapped it around his puppet. The tentacle had the ability to detect. Once it sensed the interference of other spiritual will, it would immediately turn into a shield of spiritual will to defend. The advantage of doing this was that the use of spiritual will was maximized. There was no need to waste much spiritual will. However, it wasn't impossible for anyone to do this. It could be said that this person's control had an extremely terrifying requirement for the microscopic operation of his spiritual will. The 9 of them used their greatest abilities to break through the maze while controlling the puppets to move forward. At this moment, no one in the surrounding microscopic world interfered. After all, since they were here to play, They all knew very well that this puppet maze required extreme concentration. Yi Xian's entire mind was focused on the puppet maze. He quickly broke through the maze formation in his mind and searched for a way out. The tiny puppet stumbled forward step by step. It took Yi Xian an entire hour to walk out of a small puppet maze. Even so, he was the first to walk out, and his speed was much faster than the second place by a large margin. With 95,000 spirit stones in hand, Yi Xian didn't care too much about the spirit stones bet. Instead, he was interested in the puppet maze. This was because he had only played once, and he could clearly feel that his spiritual will had improved a little. It could be said that as long as Yi Xian played with the puppet maze once a day, he would be able to quickly improve his spiritual will control. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't know how to make this puppet maze. Even if he thought of a way to buy one from the Zhuang family, he wouldn't be able to train without a group of people using their spiritual will to compete with him. Therefore, Yi Xian gave up on the idea of buying this puppet maze to train his spiritual will. After playing a round of the puppet maze, Yi Xian continued to walk forward. Not long after, he came across another strange gambling platform. He didn't know where this banker had gotten a large amount of special minerals called star sand from. This star sand was used to refine magic treasures, but in reality, it wasn't of much use. However, the star sand had an extremely special attribute, and that was that it was extremely difficult to refine. Generally speaking, the weapon refiners of the God Realm would use star sand as a grade assessment material. Of course, star sand was also divided into grades, and the star sand on the gambling platform was actually the highest grade of existence. The rules of the gambling platform were extremely simple. The star sand was divided into equal amounts, and whoever could refine the star power within it the fastest would win. Of course, if the time was about right, then it would be decided according to the purity of the star power refined. Refining star sand was a basic skill that every weapon refiner knew, so it was inevitable that there would be people who wanted to try and challenge it. Even if they clearly knew that since this person dared to set up a gambling platform, it meant that he was extremely confident in refining star sand. Come, who's willing to give it a try? Extracting stars and is a basic skill of every artificer. There are 2 portions of stars and whoever can extract it first will be the winner. The minimum bet is 100,000 spirit stones. Who's willing to give it a try? If you win against me, I'll pay you double. The dealer won once again. He happily put away the spirit stones he had won into his interspatial ring. Then, he started to shout loudly again. Yi Xian had been paying attention to the dealer's movements. Unfortunately, this guy didn't cheat, but the refining method was very special. It wasn't a normal refining method, but a very strange one. Including Yi Xian, other than the Zhuang clan, everyone else would probably feel extremely uncomfortable just by watching. Each of his actions seemed to be deliberately going against the laws of refinement. Each of his actions seemed to be so daring. It felt like this fellow wasn't refining materials at all, but was courting death. Li fire, mysterious fire, extinguishing fire, dark fire, calamity fire. There were 5 completely different refining flames, but this guy insisted on forcefully merging them into one. Not to mention others, even Yi Xian wouldn't be able to do this with the help of the system. The fusion of 5 types of flames wasn't that simple, because these 5 types of flames weren't simple flames. Afterwards, when this fellow was refining, he was extremely bold and risky. Almost every time he purified, he would only stop when he reached the critical point of strength. Yi Xian felt ashamed of his control. As long as this fellow was slightly slower, he was destined to destroy the entire refining process. However, he had grasped that delicate moment perfectly. Genius! With a thought, Yi Xian gave his evaluation. At the same time, he suddenly came to a realization. If it was someone who could be called a genius in the demon god's domain, wouldn't it be very likely that he was the Holy Sun? Yi Xian's gaze was focused on that person, but he wasn't sure. After all, this person didn't reveal anything special about him. He silently memorized this person, then left an extremely secretive spiritual will mark on him. Afterwards, Yi Xian left the gambling platform. If this guy was a Holy Sun, then Yi Xian wanted to see if he could get any useful information from him. Of course, everything was still unknown. Only Yi Xian would know if he was the Holy Sun or not. Although this was only a level 1 area, there were all sorts of strange gambling styles, and the stakes were also different. Here, as long as you dared to make a bet, someone would dare to accept it. Yi Xian personally saw a fellow whose eyes were red from gambling actually bet his life on it. In the end, he lost and was imprinted with a slave mark. Chapter 2871. One's life. The gambling platform occupied a large area, and it was surrounded by a ring of pavilions. Blood Hunt. It could be said that this was a very popular gambling platform in the Level 1 area. It was called a gambling platform because one could also gamble here. But more than that, it wasn't gambling. The Blood Hunt's gameplay was extremely brutal. The enclosed area was deliberately divided into several large areas. Every time it opened, there would be battles between 2 areas, 3, 4, or even more areas. There were many ways to play it. One could enter the arena and kill the living creatures as they pleased. One could also choose an area and attack other areas according to one's wishes. Unfortunately, the instant Yi Xian saw this, he almost went berserk. Human race, all of them were human race. In that arena, no matter which area it was, there were imprisoned humans. It was very likely that those humans had been kept in captivity by this gambling platform for generations. At the end of a gambling fight, at least tens of thousands of people would lose their lives, but they would quickly be replenished. When Yi Xian went over, there was a divine beast that had transformed into its original form and was slaughtering to its heart's content. One after another, humans were torn apart by him, as if he was eating fruits. He grabbed a human in his hand and casually crushed it to death. The bright red blood was like a delicious drink that he casually swallowed. The unbridled laughter of the other divine beasts could be heard from the surroundings. Perhaps in the eyes of the human race, these pavilions were unreachable and frightening. This was because every time someone came down from these pavilions, there would be a reign of terror. Yi Xian actually didn't want to cause trouble. His main purpose in coming here was to relax and rest for a few days. But who would have thought that even though he didn't want to cause trouble, it just had to cause trouble for him. Step by step, Yi Xian directly walked towards the Zhuang clan's location. Walala! A large pile of spirit stones was poured out like a small mountain. On the other side, there was also a pile of various resources. The banker's face was overjoyed. He immediately ran over and asked Yi Xian, "Esteemed guest, I wonder how you want to play?" That person didn't realize the anger in Yi Xian's heart at all. He thought that Yi Xian was here to have fun, so he was naturally very enthusiastic. Yi Xian's face was cold as he asked in an ice-cold voice, "You guys can play however you want here." "Of course, esteemed guest. As long as you want to play, we can provide you with it." "Very good." After Yi Xian finished speaking, he casually waved his hand and threw another 10 ancient resources into the pile of spirit stones. "I will use these as a bet. Whoever wants to obtain these spirit stones and resources will have to come down and fight me. Regardless of life or death, if you defeat me, all of these resources will be yours." Yi Xian said these words to everyone present. Because in Yi Xian's heart, he'd already determined that these people deserved to die. Of course, the divine beast in the field also heard these words. At this moment, it had already returned to its original form and transformed into a human. It looked at the pile of spirit stones and resources in surprise. There were probably millions of spirit stones, but that was secondary. The key was the 10 ancient resources. It could be said that no one wouldn't be jealous of them. "I'll do it, kid. Is this part of the bet? Grandpa will play with you." The incomparably arrogant great god in the field clamored. In fact, he could already see that Yi Xian's strength had already reached the High Divine Emperor realm. However, he was still a 5th-grade High Divine Emperor, so how could he be afraid? Yi Xian was waiting for this sentence. As long as he dared to accept the challenge, then Yi Xian would not let him go. This was the Bloody 7 Nights, so Yi Xian naturally didn't dare to cause trouble openly. However, since he said that it was a bet, then it was a legal killing. Yi Xian suddenly jumped into the arena. The god's slaughtering sword had already been unsheathed. He didn't even give the divine beast a chance to speak before directly killing it. God-slaying slash. One sword, just one sword, but it had already split the divine beast in half. Even if he split it in half, Yi Xian still wasn't satisfied. With a casual wave of his hand, the divine beast's corpse was shattered into millions of pieces. Raising his hand and pointing, Yi Xian directly asked the divine beasts in the pavilion, "Who's next?" Although Yi Xian had killed a divine beast, it wouldn't scare the other divine beasts. After all, in the demon god's domain, killing was more common than in the Kunlun divine domain. At this moment, Yi Xian had taken out so many resources. How could those divine beasts be willing to leave? Let me do it. Suddenly, a divine beast landed in the arena. As soon as it landed, it immediately transformed into its original form. It was a strange large bird. The instant this fellow landed on the ground, he immediately flapped his wings and a violent force swept towards Yi Xian. Unfortunately, Yi Xian wasn't moved at all. Below the Divine Emperor stage, even if it was a peak 9th grade Divine Emperor, Yi Xian wouldn't be powerless to fight. One by one, Yi Xian would kill as many as he came. Weren't these people coveting his treasures? Then, let's see if they had the strength to do so. This was a gamble to begin with. From the beginning, Yi Xian had already said that he was gambling with his life. Thus, if one wanted to covet Yi Xian's treasures, they would have to plan on losing their lives. Moreover, this was a level 1 area. To be able to have a few Divine Emperor stage cultivators was already considered strong. Naturally, it was impossible for enemies of a higher realm to appear. 1, 2, 3. Yi Xian's pile of spirit stones and resources caused the many divine beasts to jump off the stage as if they didn't care about their lives. In their hearts, Yi Xian's resources were worth risking their lives for. And the battles that Yi Xian had experienced made them feel that the opportunity was right in front of them. Every time Yi Xian killed a divine beast, he would take away its corpse. This way, there would only be some bloodstains in the arena. This way, it wouldn't give the divine beasts too much pressure, so these divine beasts were still constantly sending themselves to their deaths. At this moment, the one who was most worried was the banker. At this moment, the banker was already sweating profusely. After all, he was the one who agreed to this bet. At the beginning, when he saw that Yi Xian was only at the first level of the Divine Emperor stage, he thought that he would have the chance to take away those resources. He even arranged for 2 of his capable subordinates to go over and challenge him. However, when Yi Xian erupted with a powerful combat strength, he regretted it. It could be said that the banker's greatest wish was for Yi Xian to stop killing. Although the gambling battle was voluntary, if too many people died in his gambling platform, then he wouldn't be able to continue doing business in the future. Moreover, every gambling platform had a death quota. If it exceeded this quota, then the white fierce giant would interfere. Their way of asking would not be gentle. It would be good enough if they could keep their lives. At this moment, the banker couldn't hold it in any longer as he watched Yi Xian slaughter his way through the arena. He directly knelt in front of Yi Xian. "Senior, I beg of you, please don't kill me. This lowly one is willing to compensate you for your losses. As long as you ask, this lowly one will do his best to satisfy you." Chapter 2872. 2460. Incomparably oppressive. Hearing the banker's begging voice, Yi Xian's anger wasn't that great after this round of slaughter, so he directly said to the banker, "You want me to stop the bet? Sure. I'll give you a chance. Hand over all the human slaves in your hands to me. Otherwise today I will kill every single one of them I see." What an arrogant and domineering tone. If it was another place, or another person, they would definitely be treated as a fool if they dared to clamor so arrogantly. However, no one doubted Yi Xian's words here. Because Yi Xian had the strength. Yi Xian had already used the lives of nearly 100 divine beasts to prove his strength. It could be said that the banker or even everyone here had the strength to go against him. The banker's expression changed drastically. In reality, he had kept a few human slaves in captivity, and there were millions of them. However, these human slaves were his money tree. Without the human slaves, how could he attract customers? "Senior, how about I give you the spirit stones? I'm willing to give you 10 million spirit stones as a reward for your hard work." 10 million? Yi Xian glanced at him disdainfully. The banker thought that Yi Xian thought it was too little, so he immediately increased the price. 20 million. 20 million. "Senior, I'll give you 20 million. How about you stop the bet?" "I will say it one more time. Call out all of your human slaves. Otherwise, don't interfere in my fight." Unfortunately, he didn't dare to do so. After all, the white ferocious giant's simple mind wouldn't care that much. In their eyes, since they saw Yi Xian fight in the banker's territory, then they would only cause trouble for the banker. The white ferocious giant was simple-minded to begin with. Combined with the strict style of the great ant race, The rules were unbreakable in the 7 bloody nights. The banker wanted nothing more than to slap himself in the face. Why did he have to be greedy back then? If it wasn't for this, he wouldn't have provoked a god of death like Yi Xian. Unfortunately, it was useless to say anything now. He could only choose to accept or not. The consequence of not accepting was to face the questioning of the white ferocious giant clan. Compared to this, losing some human slaves was not unacceptable. All right, I accept your conditions. All of the human slaves will be given to you. The banker gnashed his teeth as he spoke. He'd long since hated Yi Xian in his heart. Yi Xian didn't care so much. He directly opened the devouring space and sucked the million humans into it. Now that there were 12 divine trees of laws in the devouring space, the power of the laws was constantly perfected, causing the devouring space to constantly expand. Therefore, there wasn't the slightest bit of pressure to accommodate a mere million people. After doing all of this, Yi Xian left. Yi Xian was very clear that if he did this, he would definitely be hated by the banker, and the banker would definitely find someone to take care of him. However, Yi Xian had no choice but to do this. This was the life of a million of his own race. How could Yi Xian sit back and do nothing? Of course, even if these people wanted to take revenge on Yi Xian, they'd have to at least wait until Yi Xian left the Bloody 7 Nights. He dared to make a move in the Bloody 7 Nights unless he was prepared to declare war on the White Fierce Giant Clan and the Great Ant Clan. Originally, Yi Xian thought that since he'd saved a million people, there probably wouldn't be many humans suffering in the Bloody 7 Nights. Unfortunately, Yi Xian miscalculated. Not long after he left, he encountered a similar gambling platform. And here, it was even more bloody and cruel. The 9 nether flames were a type of divine flame that would never be extinguished. Moreover, the temperature of this divine flame was extremely low. Wherever it shone, it would immediately turn that place into a land of ice. And this gambling platform, it was unknown where he got his hands on the 1-star 9 nether earth fire. This fellow used the 9 nether earth fire as a guide, and then used an ordinary profound flame to wrap it up, hanging it high above a pavilion. Every once in a while, 100 humans would be pushed in, and the surrounding people would be able to place bets on how long those people would be able to survive, as well as who would be the last person to be frozen to death. Because the power of the profound fire could raise the temperature of the 9 nether earth fire by a little, the surrounding people could clearly see how those 100 people were frozen to death. There were many heating items in the arena, but there were many traps set up. If one wanted to survive, they would have to work together to obtain heating items. However, the heating items were limited, and some people were destined to die without a doubt. For those who survived, there would be all sorts of tests waiting for them. In order to survive, those who were pushed into it would kill each other and step on the corpses of their companions just to live a little longer. Such a cruel scene, but these people watched it with relish. Yi Xian was enraged. Although Yi Xian couldn't directly kill everyone due to the special nature of this place, he could still use the rules here. Ancient resources were extremely rare and special resources in the God realm. Even if it was just one, it would be enough to cause a bloody storm. Yi Xian cleverly made use of the greed of these divine beasts. He still set up the arena and gambled his life on it, killing these divine beasts one by one. Yi Xian wouldn't despise these divine beasts for being too low in cultivation. They couldn't even contribute to him in the slightest. As long as it was a divine beast here, as long as they dared to step onto the gambling arena, Yi Xian would kill them all. One after another, Yi Xian would visit anyone who dared to use the human race as a place to amuse themselves. In just 3 short months, the number of divine beasts that died at Yi Xian's hands was probably no less than 10,000. The number of humans that Yi Xian had rescued had already reached tens of millions. The name of the madman began to spread in the first level of the Bloody 7 Nights region. Many people knew that there was a guy who specialized in gambling his life. That guy held a huge sword in his hand, and from time to time, he would use a divine bow. In every battle, he would never leave a single survivor. That person took the initiative to find a challenge. Every time he challenged, he would use ancient resources as a bet. If he won, he would be able to obtain the 10 ancient resources. If he lost, he would leave his life behind. Actually, from the moment he walked out of the Monkey Clan's ancestral land, Yi Xian already knew in his heart that there was a reason why the human race was in such a situation in the demon god's domain. Perhaps if he wanted to completely resolve this matter, he had to find the root of it. Right now, Yi Xian was killing in all directions. This was an extremely unwise choice. Even with the help of the system to hide his identity, it was inevitable that one day he would be exposed as a human. At that time, it would be difficult for him to move an inch. It wasn't that Yi Xian didn't know this, but he couldn't just watch his fellow clansmen suffer and ignore them. Even if he knew that doing this would only provoke an even more powerful enemy, Yi Xian still had to do it. After all, if he didn't do this, then Yi Xian's conscience wouldn't be able to pass. Once a shadow was left in his heart, then what awaited Yi Xian might be the eruption of his inner demons. Chapter 2873. Rush out. Of course, Yi Xian wasn't wrong. However, his actions had still violated the interests of some people. Coupled with the wanted order, it could be said that Yi Xian never imagined that all the dangers would erupt at the same time. In the beginning, it was those villains who saw the appearance of the god-slaughtering sword that found Yi Xian in the restaurant. They prepared to kill Yi Xian in one fell swoop and seize the god-slaughtering sword. However, before they could make a move, they were taken care of by another group of people. However, this group of people didn't come to help Yi Xian. It was because they wanted to retrieve what they'd lost from Yi Xian's hands. These people were none other than the casino dealers that Yi Xian's challenge had destroyed. Don't underestimate these bankers. Since they opened a casino here, then they naturally belonged to their own forces. It was just that they didn't know Yi Xian's background in the beginning, so they didn't make a move. That was until a wanted order was sent to Bloody Seven Knights. This was a wanted order jointly issued by several super experts. Naturally, these experts represented several powerful forces. The content of this wanted order was extremely simple. There was only Yi Xian's portrait and the description of the mission. This time, the various powers had put in a lot of effort. The rewards that they offered were something that ordinary people would find hard to refuse. Just the spirit stones alone were 1 billion. 1 billion spirit stones. This was a crazy number. Not to mention that other than these 1 billion spirit stones, there were also countless treasures. Just the number of spots to rent land and bless was 10 times. A bounty that made countless people go crazy. A bounty that no one would be able to refuse. Fortunately, those experts had publicly issued the wanted order this time, so Yi Xian received the news at the first possible moment. Yi Xian silently stood on top of a pavilion. 2 god-slaughtering swords were already revolving around him, and the Rule God Bow was in his hand. The Divine Wood Sword Attendant and the Flower God Sword Attendant also silently guarded Yi Xian's side. In front of them, there were countless divine beasts. These divine beasts immediately rushed to Yi Xian's location after receiving the wanted order and surrounded him. They might not be strong, and there were only a few high-level divine emperors. However, Yi Xian was very clear that these people only needed to trap him for half a cup of tea. Then, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to leave this place today. Kill! Yi Xian suddenly let out a loud roar as he charged towards the tens of thousands of enemies. The carnage only lasted for a moment before the entire sky was covered in blood. At this moment, Yi Xian no longer held back. As long as he was trapped here, Yi Xian would definitely die. Thus, how could Yi Xian dare to hide his strength? Activate Dharma Idol, Thousand Hands Prodigy. Another new Dharma Idol was activated. The Dharma Idol was extremely difficult to obtain, and the cooldown time was extremely long. It could be said that the Dharma Idol was Yi Xian's final trump card. However, at this point, how could Yi Xian still hesitate? The Thousand Hands Child Prodigy Dharma Idol was said to be a boy who cultivated a special divine ability. After 1,000,000 years of constantly tempering his hands, by chance, he obtained a special divine ability, the Thousand Hands Divine Ability. The Thousand Hands Divine Ability was to use a special method to link 1,000 arms with the main body, allowing the main body to control 1,000 arms. This was not a simple method of gathering energy, but a true hand of divine power, a divine will, and a pulse of divine sense. It was said that in the entire God realm, it would be difficult to find a few people who could fuse their divine will and divine power to surpass the Thousand Hands Child Prodigy's Thousand Hands Divine Ability. The God-slaughtering sword had already rushed out. Under Wei Zhentian's control, they were the vanguard. Yi Xian advanced courageously. Anyone who dared to block his path would be killed by him one by one. A bloody path instantly formed. That was because Yi Xian charged over from here. This time, Yi Xian couldn't be bothered to devour the corpses of these low-level divine beasts. He allowed the corpses of these low-level divine beasts to form a bloody path. Along the way, Yi Xian didn't encounter any decent obstructions until he arrived at the exit of the secret realm. At this moment, 7 experts were already blocking the exit. This was the strongest force that Blood 7 Knights could muster in the shortest amount of time. Yi Xian saw the wanted poster at the first possible moment, and then acted without hesitation, causing Blood 7 Knights to have no time to react. All they could do was gather all the Divine Emperor stage experts in the first level area together. 7 people with different appearances, obviously from 7 different races. Amongst them, there was a fellow who was over 3 meters tall who was the most respected. This was because he was the supervisor of the first level area. You cannot pass. White Ferocious Giant Clan. From the tone of his voice, one could tell that this fellow was from the White Ferocious Giant Clan. Brat, be obedient and come with us. Perhaps after you hand over the treasure, we can consider sparing your life. After all, what we want is the treasure, not your life. The Thousand-Eyed Wolf Frog Clan. As expected of the most obedient lackey of the White Ferocious Giant Clan. Just as the White Ferocious Giant manager finished speaking, this fellow immediately took over. Yi Xian glanced at the Thousand-Eyed Wolf Frog, but didn't look at it for even a moment longer. This fellow wasn't worth Yi Xian's attention at all. Yi Xian really didn't know where a mere lower third-grade Divine Emperor realm ant got the courage to challenge Yi Xian. Yi Xian's attention was focused on a white-clothed youth. This white-clothed youth held a folding fan in his hand. He seemed to be elegant and extraordinarily handsome. However, if one knew what his true form was, they probably wouldn't think so. Of course, Yi Xian didn't care about this at all. What he cared about was his cultivation. According to the system's detection results, this fellow was at the peak of the 9th grade Divine Emperor realm. In other words, it was enough to pose a threat to Yi Xian. If Yi Xian really fought with this person, it could be said that the outcome of the battle was only 50-50. Of course, Yi Xian had a lot of supplementary methods, and even the help of the Divine Wood Sword Attendant. However, this fellow also had 6 Divine Emperor realm experts by his side. Therefore, this battle wouldn't be that easy to fight. However, no matter what, it wasn't easy to fight. At this moment, did Yi Xian still have a choice? Wei Zhantian, kill him! Following Yi Xian's loud roar, his might shook the heavens as he directly controlled the god-slaughtering sword to slash at 2 enemies of average strength. Yi Xian's plan was very simple. It was to kill these weaker enemies first. Divine Wood Swordsman, go up there. With another order, the Divine Wood Sword Attendant instantly moved and charged towards the 7 people. The Divine Wood Sword Attendant's defense was strong, so naturally, it would be pushed to the front by Yi Xian. After receiving the order, the Divine Wood Sword Attendant didn't hesitate at all and charged forward. However, Yi Xian's summoning wasn't over yet. Flower God Sword Attendant. God-level mounts, come out. Chapter 2874. 2462. Absolute power. As soon as the Flower God Sword Attendant appeared, he summoned the 100 Flowers Flower God. Together with the God rank mount, he charged in all directions. This was because there were countless enemies around Yi Xian who weren't strong enough, yet wanted to fish in troubled waters. These fellows didn't seem to have much of an impact on the surface, but Yi Xian knew very well that sometimes, it was these small characters that changed the outcome of a battle. Even if the possibility was very small, as long as it existed, then Yi Xian had to eliminate it. The current God rank mount and the Flower God Sword Attendant might not be able to keep up with Yi Xian's strength before they evolved, but they were more than enough to support him from the side. After doing all of this, Yi Xian pulled out his divine bow at the same time. 7 consecutive arrows instantly shot out, each of them containing the power of the Law of Devouring. Moreover, Yi Xian had even used the Divine Will ability he'd just obtained, the Divine Will Sword. It was also 7 attacks. It could be said that this was already the strongest attack Yi Xian could unleash, and all of this was completed in a short moment. Especially the last 2 fatal attacks. The enemy didn't even have time to react before the attacks arrived. Apart from the expert at the peak of the 9th grade Divine Emperor realm, the others were immediately flustered by Yi Xian's explosive attack. 4 of them were even killed by Yi Xian on the spot. The terrifying strength caused everyone in the 7 Bloody Knights to cry out in alarm. Perhaps just a moment ago, there were still some people who were ready to make a move and attempt to sneak attack Yi Xian. But at this moment, almost no one dared to have such a thought. Terrifying, it was simply too terrifying. This fellow was actually able to unleash such a violent attack in such a short period of time. This was simply beyond the imagination of these divine beasts. Countless divine beasts retreated. Yi Xian stood there in the crowd. He didn't speak, didn't move, and didn't attack. However, with just a single attack, Yi Xian's strength had already caused all the divine beasts here to collapse. Too strong. This person was simply too strong. He was definitely not an existence that they could resist. At this moment, the remaining 3 Divine Emperor Realm experts looked at Yi Xian in shock. Just a moment ago, they swore that taking down Yi Xian was just a small matter. After all, Yi Xian's strength was only at the upper first-grade Divine Emperor Realm. But at the next moment, everyone no longer had the same thoughts. Was this power really something that a mere upper first-grade Divine Emperor Realm expert could display? No one answered. However, no matter who it was, even if it was that upper 9th-grade Divine Emperor Realm expert, they no longer dared to speak at this moment. Let not. Yi Xian looked at the remaining 3 Divine Emperor Realm experts in front of him and said indifferently. His tone was incomparably cold. Now, Yi Xian gave them a chance to choose. There were 2 options. There was no third way. Brat, don't be arrogant. This is the Bloody 7 Nights, don't think that you can leave alive. Whoosh! The god-slaughtering sword that was floating in the air did not stop for a moment and directly rushed over. The person who spoke did not even have time to react and had already shattered the divine deity. In fact, after the 2 god-slaughtering swords broke that person's divine deity, they did not stop and quickly cut the divine beast's corpse into thousands of pieces. Silence. Silence. There was no sound at the entrance. Wasn't this a little too domineering? One had to know that the person that Yi Xian had killed was the only supreme expert at the peak of the Divine Emperor Realm. Originally, the divine beasts were still hoping that the expert would be able to kill Yi Xian, but now, he was already cut into pieces by Yi Xian. Of course, those people didn't notice that most of the divine beast's body had already been devoured by Yi Xian. At this moment, it was just an act. Actually, Yi Xian's attack was premeditated. Now that he was surrounded, he could only use absolute strength to intimidate the enemy. Killing these divine beasts wasn't difficult at all for Yi Xian. However, if he did that, it would definitely cause an unnecessary waste of time. Yi Xian didn't have the time to waste right now. Therefore, in reality, this sword strike was already Yi Xian's strongest attack. Ever since he saw these 7 people, Yi Xian had been planning his strongest attack. Who else? Yi Xian closed his eyes and said indifferently. His voice was filled with indifference, but at the same time, it also contained boundless pressure. The first time he made a move, he killed 4 Divine Emperor Realm experts and blocked the attack of thousands of troops at the same time. The second time he made a move, he instantly killed a supreme expert at the peak of the 9th level of the Divine Emperor Realm. That expert didn't even have time to cry out in alarm. Therefore, many people were puzzled. If Yi Xian were to use the third move, then what would the result be? The moment Yi Xian glanced at them, the 2 divine beast experts that were blocking the exit of the secret realm retreated to the sides without any hesitation. They didn't dare to stop him because they didn't have the strength to do so. If he went up now, he would undoubtedly be waiting for death. At this moment, there was no need to mention the surrounding people. Almost everyone hurriedly retreated, as if whoever was a little closer to Yi Xian might be killed by him. Everywhere Yi Xian's gaze passed, there was only boundless fear. These divine beasts were very clear in their hearts that even if the rewards on the bounty were extremely generous, it was not something they could easily touch. Therefore, at this moment, since they'd already witnessed Yi Xian's strength, there was no need for them to send themselves to their deaths. The path had already been opened, so Yi Xian naturally didn't have any intention of continuing. He immediately walked out of the secret realm and casually threw out the Eternal Night domain. In an instant, once anyone entered the exit of the secret realm, it would be difficult for them to see anything. Even if they used their spiritual will, they wouldn't be able to see through it. Yi Xian quickly ran forward. After all, since the Bloody 7 Nights had already received the news, there was no need to mention the outside. There were probably many dangers waiting for Yi Xian outside. This place was not suitable for him to stay for long. If he escaped from this place, he had to leave as quickly as possible. Otherwise, once the experts of the Bloody 7 Nights caught up to him, he would never be able to escape. The current Yi Xian didn't have any goals at all. In his heart, The only thing left was how to escape the encirclement and how to survive in the demon god's domain. With a wanted order on his back, Yi Xian would find it difficult to move an inch. It could be said that almost the entire demon god's domain would be Yi Xian's enemy. Live to find a way to the Kunlun divine domain, and at the same time, do your best to find Luo Luo's whereabouts. Chapter 2875. Holy Sun. Yi Xian quickly advanced. This time, he walked for millions of miles. At this moment, Yi Xian stood in front of a tall mountain. This mountain was rather strange, as if it was a divine beast that had been sealed by some sort of power. Its appearance was incomparably strange. However, Yi Xian felt that it was impossible, because on this mountain, there were beautiful divine trees and endless beasts. If this mountain was a living divine beast, then it would be impossible for it to grow a divine tree, much less attract a small beast to rest in. However, just as Yi Xian was admiring the mountain peak, a voice suddenly sounded out. It was like a thunderclap. At the same time the voice rang out, a big bald head had already rushed over. Haha, so it's the kid on the wanted list. I already said that I would encounter a good thing today, and it was indeed so. Brat, come here, I heard that your head is very valuable. Give me your head to exchange for some wine money. What a domineering tone. The most important thing was that when this guy said these words, he acted as if it was a matter of course. It was already Yi Xian's honor to be able to exchange his head for divine wine. Drunkard, slow down. Suddenly, two more figures chased after him. However, from their tone, it was obvious that their status was much lower than this drunkard's. However, the difference in strength wasn't that great. System, detect this person's strength and check their race at the same time. Ding, system prompt. This detection will consume 100,000 people's faith points. Does the host confirm? Confirm. Ding, system prompt. Designated target. High 4th grade Divine Emperor, with the title of King level crown. Race. Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp Race. Host, please note, the designated target is the Holy Son of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp Race. A Holy Son? Yi Xian abruptly raised his head, but his heart was filled with joy. This was simply a case of breaking iron shoes and finding nothing without any effort at all. Back then, Yi Xian had planned to kill these Holy Sons everywhere in order to find out Luo Luo's whereabouts. However, before he could take action, it had already become like this. He didn't expect that he would meet a Holy Son the moment he arrived here. Hey brat, what are you looking at? The Holy Son is talking to you. Why aren't you replying? Beside the Holy Son, a skinny follower widened his eyes. This Yi Xian's eyes were filled with disdain. However, this fellow's gaze was constantly trying to pry into the universe ring on Yi Xian's finger. Yi Xian didn't have anything. In the hearts of these three, Yi Xian was just an insignificant beauty. However, the universe ring in Yi Xian's hand contained a treasure that even the heavenly dragon drunken shrimp clan's patriarch wanted to obtain. Therefore, this fellow's gaze naturally stopped on Yi Xian's universe ring. As for the other follower, when he saw Yi Xian, he was slightly stunned before he took out his magic treasure. It was obvious that he also knew who Yi Xian was and was prepared to make a move. Yi Xian swept his gaze over the three of them. The three of them did have some strength, but the most important thing was that there was a Holy Son among them. He must have grasped quite a few special abilities or magic treasures. However, even so, Yi Xian didn't care at all. With a casual wave of his hand, the two god-slaughtering swords flew out. Since he knew that negotiation wasn't the way to solve the problem, then why would Yi Xian waste time negotiating? It would be better to just directly kill him. Previous chapter next chapter, boom! Previous chapter next chapter, boom! The two god-slaughtering swords attacked from two different places. With a sudden attack and the power of the god-slaughtering swords, the two followers were sent flying. However, it was impossible to kill them so easily. The two of them were only forced back a few steps before they were locked in battle with the god-slaughtering sword. Brat, you actually dare to attack me? It looks like you're tired of living. The Holy Son didn't expect Yi Xian to attack first. At this moment, his expression was rather angry. However, he didn't want to think about it. When did he ever give Yi Xian a way to live? The moment he appeared, he directly asked Yi Xian to hand over his head. Wasn't this the same as asking Yi Xian to commit suicide? This Holy Son had probably been pampered for too long, to the point that he had forgotten what fear was. It was so long that he couldn't tell what was good and what was bad. Yi Xian didn't care about this kind of person at all. Don't try to reason with them. This kind of person who was spoiled to the point that he couldn't tell good from bad had different thoughts from others. Therefore, the best way to communicate with them was to use strength to speak. The divine bow of law was held in Yi Xian's hand, but Yi Xian first launched a spiritual will attack. A sword of spiritual will suddenly appeared and directly charged towards the Holy Sun's sea of consciousness. The sudden spiritual will attack caused the Holy Sun to panic. However, it was just as Yi Xian had thought. This fellow's divine beast possessed an extremely large number of magic treasures. A piece of divine wood pendant suddenly burst out with a bright light, actually blocking the spiritual will attack for the Holy Sun. With a pop sound, the divine wood pendant shattered. The Holy Sun looked at the divine wood pendant on his chest in astonishment. A moment later, his face revealed an incomparably furious expression. "Brat, you actually dared to destroy my pendant. I will kill you, kill you." Dang. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom. An incomparably violent force was instantly unleashed. The violent force directly broke through several mountains, leaving behind a huge ravine behind Yi Xian. As for Yi Xian, he could clearly see this fellow's attack method. He had actually managed to perfectly fuse the power of the Dharma idol with his own body. One had to know that in the instant this fellow attacked, Yi Xian clearly saw a huge lobster Dharma idol. This Holy Sun is the Holy Sun of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. As for me, my Dharma idol looks like a big lobster, so it's not enough. Yi Xian didn't find this strange. What Yi Xian found strange was that when he attacked, he was only restricted by a wave of his hand. The Dharma idol actually followed his movements and attacked at the same time. A high degree of fusion between the Dharma idol and the main body. Without a doubt, this was a good thing. The power of the Dharma idol was extremely powerful, especially the power of some special Dharma idols. Ordinary people would at most borrow the power of the Dharma idol and use the special abilities of the Dharma idol as an attack method. For example, the few times Yi Xian used the Dharma idol of the 10,000 sovereigns bloodline as a buff, he was actually borrowing the abilities contained within the Dharma idol. However, the use of the Dharma idol was not limited to borrowing power. The Dharma idol could also fuse with the main body. Once it was successful, not to mention a 100% fusion rate, even if it was 70% fusion rate, the combat strength that could be unleashed would be extremely terrifying. It could be said that even the title of the Venerable Level First Crown was nothing in front of the fusion. However, it was not that simple to fuse with the Dharma idol. It was already very difficult to find a suitable Dharma idol, and one had to have a suitable compatibility with the Dharma idol in order to fuse with it. All of this had already determined that fusing with the Dharma idol was not something an ordinary person could do. Only the core disciples of those great powers. Chapter 2876. The new use of the divine gravity arrow. However, Yi Xian didn't expect that he would meet such a Dharma fusion user. The corners of Yi Xian's mouth curled up. He had already made up his mind. The Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp's Dharma idol wasn't too powerful. Moreover, even if it was given to Yi Xian, he would only store it as one of the Dharma idols collected by the 10,000 venerables. However, if he were to subdue this Holy Sun as well, the effect would be great. Yi Xian was confident that he could fuse this guy's Dharma idol to the extreme. At that time, he would have another fighter. Puppet technique. This was the plan that Yi Xian had prepared. Of course, although this idea was good, it would be very difficult to realize. However, Yi Xian still had a backup plan. At most, he would beat this guy half to death, then throw him into the devouring space and slowly train him. Yi Xian lowered his head and pondered over his own matters. The Holy Sun didn't know about Yi Xian's schemes at all. At this moment, the furious Holy Sun had already pounced towards Yi Xian. "Brat, you dare to destroy my pendant? I will kill you. I will definitely kill you." With a punch, a huge lobster pincer appeared in the sky. She looked like she was carved out of jade. She looked so exquisite, but she was also so violent. Yi Xian immediately activated his infinite teleportation and dodged in an instant. In the blink of an eye, 100-meter deep crater was created where Yi Xian originally stood. After missing a single move, the Holy Sun's voice changed and he quickly charged towards Yi Xian. He continuously waved his hands, causing the entire area to turn into a terrifying purgatory. However, Such a seemingly crazy attack wasn't able to injure Yi Xian in the slightest. Yi Xian really wanted to ask this guy, was he really stupid? He only knew how to fight in close combat. Could it be that he didn't have any divine abilities? And his law attack? His domain? Was this guy so stupid that he didn't even know how to use these? However, just because he didn't use it didn't mean that Yi Xian wouldn't use it. Absolute Zero. Yi Xian directly activated his special ability, preparing to trap this guy on the spot. However, a strange scene happened. The power of Absolute Zero was actually broken by this guy's punch. Using a fist to break a divine ability. If it was in the past, Yi Xian wouldn't even dare to think about it. How powerful was the power of a divine ability? How could someone use a fist to break a divine ability? Unfortunately, someone had done it now. Yi Xian could clearly see that when the power of Absolute Zero pounced towards the Holy Sun, the Holy Sun also punched out. Then, the Holy Sun's fist paused for a moment, and he felt a mysterious power dissipate. Without a doubt, that was the manifestation of Absolute Zero being broken. Someone actually used a fist to break a divine ability. Yi Xian didn't believe it. With a thought, he launched another attack. Eternal Night Domain. This time Yi Xian used the power of a domain. He wanted to see if this guy could break through a domain. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom! With a loud sound, Yi Xian slightly opened his mouth because he was too shocked. This Holy Sun had really done it. He actually used his fist to break through the domain. This guy is strange. Yi Xian silently thought in his heart. This Holy Sun could use his fists to break through divine abilities, and he could also use his fists to break through domains. If it was in the past, Yi Xian would have never heard of such a strange situation. At this moment, in Yi Xian's heart, the idea of taking down the Holy Sun was even more important. Subdue him, and then investigate that strange ability of his. This wasn't just the effect of the fusion of the Dharma idol. Yi Xian didn't even need to ask the system to know about this. Therefore, there was a huge secret hidden within the Holy Sun's body. If Yi Xian obtained it, then his strength would definitely increase greatly. Yi Xian abruptly pulled on the Law Divine Art. Don't you like to break divine abilities? Then, Yi Xian wanted to see if this guy would be tired or not. Gravity Law Blessing. This time, Yi Xian had completely used the Gravity Law Divine Sword. The power of this law didn't have much of an effect, unless one could cultivate to the extreme and borrow an infinitely large amount of gravity to play a certain role. Otherwise, the power of the law of gravity wouldn't be enough to injure anyone. However, today was different from the past. At this moment, the power of the law of gravity was undoubtedly the most suitable power. Simply put, Yi Xian was borrowing the law of gravity's divine arrow to create the illusion of a fist attack. If it was a normal day, to put it bluntly, he would be hoping that the divine arrow would be able to smash two unlucky bastards to death. But at this moment, because of the enormous gravity, it became a good method to fight against the Holy Sun's fist. The three arrows were like three huge fists smashing towards the Holy Sun. In the end, just like what Yi Xian had shot, the Holy Sun swung his fist and smashed it into the Gravity Law Divine Arrow without hesitation. Previous chapter, next chapter, boom! A violent power instantly exploded. The Holy Sun had never imagined that this attack would be like this. With a loud bang, the Holy Sun was forced back several steps by the violent power. It's effective. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curved up. At the same time, the Rule God bow in his hand was drawn once more. This time, it was a continuous series of 7 arrows. The 7 gravitational laws suddenly smashed towards the Holy Sun. However, what Yi Xian didn't want to do was that the Holy Sun was like a fool. He didn't dodge at all and actually used his fist to clash with the Rule God's arrow. Yi Xian helplessly shook his head. This guy probably had many powerful methods. Unfortunately, he didn't know how to use them. His clan was probably a very large clan, and as the Holy Son of his clan, he had probably never fought with anyone since he was young. Even if he did fight a few times, he would only bully the weak. He might have fought against opponents of the same level before, but with his status as a saint, who would dare to go against him? Even if he fought against them, he would still be able to do as he wished. Yi Xian curled his lips in disdain. To Yi Xian, this kind of guy wasn't even the slightest bit of threat. Yi Xian opened his bow left and right. While attacking the Holy Sun, he was still able to find time to attack his two followers. His followers weren't weak, and there weren't any flaws in their abilities. Unfortunately, they met Yi Xian. Two god-slaughtering swords weren't enough? Yi Xian could even send out the divine wood sword attendant. In just a short moment, Yi Xian had already taken care of the two followers. Afterwards, he began to ravage the Holy Sun with great interest. Toward such a person, as long as he was beaten into submission, then he definitely wouldn't dare to resist. This was because it wasn't like Yi Xian hadn't met such a person in the past. Gravity arrow? Yi Xian had only used the most ordinary gravity arrow to suppress the Holy Son of the Heavenly Dragon Drunken Shrimp Clan into submission. This guy was so stupid that he was cute. Chapter 2877. 2465 Taking in a Holy Sun as a little brother after being sent flying by the gravity god arrow time and time again, the Holy Sun finally couldn't hold on any longer. One had to know that Yi Xian's grasp of strength was extremely good. He wanted to make this fellow feel pain, but he also wouldn't really take this fellow's life. The continuous attacks had already caused the Holy Sun's face to be bruised and swollen, and his body to be riddled with wounds. But in reality, these were only superficial wounds. Yi Xian didn't even attack him heavily, causing him to suffer internal injuries. Hearing the Holy Sun beg for mercy, Yi Xian didn't stop attacking. Instead, he once again released the law of gravity arrow and lightly said, "You want me to let you go? On what basis? My father is a subordinate of the Divine Lord, one of the 8 great divine generals, the Heavenly Dragon Divine General. As long as you let me go, no matter what you want, I can give it to you." Heavenly Dragon Divine General. One of the 8 great divine generals. Yi Xian was stunned. He didn't expect that the Holy Sun he'd accidentally bumped into would actually be the son of one of the 8 great divine generals. No wonder this fellow was so arrogant and despotic, and was able to obtain so many treasures. The identity of the 8 great divine generals was already at the top of the pyramid in the demon god's divine domain. Other than the divine master of the demon god's divine domain, these 8 great divine generals were probably the most noble. They were even larger than the territory that Yi Xian managed in Kunlun. In that case, possessing some special resources wasn't too strange. All right, I can spare your life. Hand over your divine deity fragment and become my little brother. Then I'll spare you. Handing over the divine deity fragment was actually equivalent to becoming a slave. However, Yi Xian knew that if he said that, then this fellow would rather die than obey. But in other words, it would be easier for this fellow to accept it as a lackey. After all, a person like him probably had quite a few lackeys before. Sure enough, the Holy Sun frowned slightly when he heard Yi Xian's words, but he didn't immediately refuse. "No, my father is a Heavenly Dragon Divine General. I won't be someone else's lackey." "Is that so there's nothing to talk about?" A smile hung on Yi Xian's mouth. He pulled the Law Divine Art once again, and 7 Gravity Law Divine arrows shot towards that fellow without the slightest hesitation. Yi Xian didn't have a complete grasp of this fellow's thoughts, but he had a rough idea. "You want to save face?" Unfortunately, Yi Xian acted as if he wanted his life. Previous chapter next chapter, boom. Previous chapter next chapter, boom. Previous chapter next chapter, boom. One after another, the Gravity Law Divine arrows continuously sent this fellow flying. "Stop, stop, I'll promise you." This guy finally gave in and handed over his quintessence shard without hesitation. Yi Xian casually waved his hand and put away his divine deity fragment. From this moment onwards, the fate of this Holy Sun was completely in Yi Xian's hands. Of course, if he wanted to truly display his combat strength, he would need to be properly trained. However, with the protection of the son of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General, Yi Xian would definitely be much safer in the demon god's domain. Moreover, he might even be able to obtain more benefits. In order to prevent the battle from attracting new enemies, Yi Xian quickly left with the Holy Sun. "Tell me, what's your name?" "My name is Sky Tiger." "Boss, what's your name?" The Heavenly Dragon Holy Sun didn't seem to have completely adapted to his new identity. Fortunately, Yi Xian was in a good mood, so he didn't bother with him. "My name is Yi Xian." After casually replying, Yi Xian said to Sky Tiger, "Let's go. Take me to a place to stay. I need a good rest." Tianhu nodded his head and walked forward. There was actually a reason why Yi Xian didn't teach this guy a lesson. At this moment, Yi Xian was still in the demon god's domain. This sky tiger would undoubtedly be able to provide protection for Yi Xian. Of course, the prerequisite was that he wouldn't arouse the suspicions of others. Therefore, only by allowing this fellow to maintain his original appearance would he be able to convince the people of the demon god's domain. Yi Xian casually exchanged for a mask from the system store. Once this mask was worn, it could conceal Yi Xian's appearance and cultivation. Of course, as long as one's cultivation was higher than Yi Xian's, they would be able to see through it. However, Yi Xian wasn't worried at all. At this moment, he was walking together with the sky tiger. In the demon god's domain, very few people would dare to use their spiritual will to investigate him. After all, using your spiritual will to investigate others could easily cause the other party to misunderstand. When the time comes, you deserve to be killed. For Yi Xian to be able to obtain such respect from the sky tiger, it would naturally cause others to mistakenly think that Yi Xian's identity was special, or even a super expert. As long as he had this worry, Yi Xian believed that no one would dare to easily investigate his identity. Under the lead of the sky tiger, the two of them quickly arrived at a city. It turned out that the sky tiger had come here to buy wine from the beginning. In this city, there lived a branch of the monkey clan. The divine wine that those fellows brewed was quite delicious, and the sky tiger had always liked it very much. Scram, scram, don't block this young master's path. The sky tiger arrogantly walked in front. It could be said that wherever he went, it was a mess. This fellow was unreasonable. Not to mention someone blocking his way, even if they weren't blocking his way, he would still run over to cause trouble. However, it was obvious that this was not the first time the people in the city had met the sky tiger, so no one came out to stop him. Instead, they all respectfully welcomed the sky tiger into the city. Welcome, eldest young master. An old man quickly arrived beside the sky tiger. He first glanced at Yi Xian, but as expected, he didn't dare to use his spiritual will to investigate Yi Xian. Instead, he respectfully stood beside the sky tiger. Wine, it's my wine. I've sent someone over to say that I'm going to get my wine today. Don't worry, eldest young master, I have already prepared all your wine. Haha, good job. I'll reward you heavily later. When the sky tiger heard that the wine was ready, it excitedly prepared to run out. However, it had only taken 2 steps when it thought of Yi Xian. Along the way, although Yi Xian didn't teach the sky tiger much, he still punished it a few times. The pain that came from the depths of its soul and divine deity was still fresh in the memory of the sky tiger. Now that it suddenly thought of Yi Xian, it realized that it was too complacent. If Yi Xian wasn't happy, then it would suffer again. Thus, at this moment, the sky tiger obediently ran in front of Yi Xian. Big brother, please go first. Along with these words, it could be said that countless people, regardless of whether they were in the open or in the dark, were completely shocked in an instant. What kind of identity did the person who dared to make the heavenly dragon saint's son call him big brother? For a moment, those who were originally prepared to use their spiritual will to probe Yi Xian were secretly glad that they didn't use it. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't even know how they died. However, even more people silently memorized Yi Xian's appearance. They secretly decided that they absolutely couldn't offend Yi Xian. After all, the heavenly dragon saint's son was already someone they had no way of fighting against, let alone the big brother of the heavenly dragon saint's son? Even if they had 100 more guts, they wouldn't dare to be impudent in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian didn't hold back. At this moment, he wanted to use the heavenly dragon saint's son to boost his reputation. Although this would put Yi Xian at the center of everyone's discussion, it would still be enough to ensure his safety. Chapter 2878. Give him a slap in the face. Jade Universe Fine Wine. It could be considered one of the more famous divine wines in the demon god's divine realm, and the quality of the Jade Universe Fine Wine was divided into 5 grades. Ordinary people could only buy 3rd grade Universe Jade wine, but even so, it was incomparably expensive and very difficult to obtain. Even with Sky Tiger's status, he could only reserve a bottle of inferior Jade Universe Fine Wine in advance. Of course, the next grade was also a divine wine that was difficult for ordinary people to obtain. Sky Tiger brought Yi Xian forward. Not long after, they arrived at a pavilion. This pavilion's design was quite unique. It was a wine gourd. This was the branch of the Jade Universe Fine Wine. The cosmic jade nectar was not an ordinary divine wine. Not every city would have a branch. Just take this branch for example. It could be considered the only one in the 10,000 realms. Otherwise, Sky Tiger wouldn't have come personally. Although Sky Tiger was arrogant and despotic, he didn't dare to lose his temper here. Even if this city was actually the property of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General, and he, Sky Tiger, was the young master here. However, once they entered the pavilion, Sky Tiger became well-behaved. The person leading the way for Sky Tiger didn't dare to enter the pavilion. It was obvious that the pavilion was independent of the city. Isn't this our holy son, Sky Tiger? Haha, I didn't expect to meet you here. The moment Yi Xian and Sky Tiger walked into the pavilion, they heard a voice. Yi Xian raised his head and saw a young man looking at Sky Tiger with a playful expression. Sky Tiger frowned. Not only did he know this person, he was also quite unfriendly. Sky Tiger didn't want to pay attention to that person, so he walked inside. However, just because Sky Tiger ignored him didn't mean that he wouldn't cause trouble for Sky Tiger. At this moment, that person actually blocked Sky Tiger and Yi Xian's path and indifferently said, "Lord Holy Sun, why aren't you giving me face? Could it be that you're afraid of me?" Ha ha ha. Lord Holy Sun, you actually came here alone today. You're really getting bolder and bolder. A group of people walked out from the pavilion. It was obvious that these people weren't very friendly towards Sky Tiger. Yi Xian didn't understand. No matter what, Sky Tiger was still the son of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General. As the Holy Sun, he'd always been arrogant and domineering. What do you want to do? At this moment, it couldn't be said that Sky Tiger was afraid. After all, with his identity, these people definitely wouldn't dare to hurt him. However, they could still humiliate him. As for the reason, it was very simple. These people were actually the holy sons of the various races. In the demon god divine realm, the status of the Holy Sun was extremely noble. Although there would be some differences due to race, overall, the difference wasn't too great. This was because all the Holy Sons had registered with the Divine Master of the demon god divine realm. Therefore, no matter how much conflict there was, no one would dare to kill them. Of course, it was normal for a few people to die in the competition between the Holy Sons. It could be said that if it wasn't for his identity as the son of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General, Sky Tiger's life would definitely be even more difficult than it was now. As for the reason, it wasn't hard to guess. Sky Tiger had always been arrogant and domineering, so he naturally wouldn't take anyone seriously. Even if the other party was also a Holy Sun, Sky Tiger wouldn't let them off. After offending too many people, Sky Tiger was also isolated. What followed was a reversal of the situation, and Sky Tiger could only hide from these Holy Sons. One had to know that no servants were allowed to interfere in the battle between the Holy Sons. Once they did, regardless of the reason, they would definitely be killed. Therefore, the battle between the Holy Sons could only rely on their own strength. Sky Tiger was only in the illusory cultivation realm and didn't have any real strength. Once they started fighting, the result was obvious. After experiencing it twice, Sky Tiger also learned to be obedient. This time, Sky Tiger came to collect the wine, but he never expected these guys to appear here. After all, they weren't people who liked wine. However, they just had to come. Perhaps, these people originally intended to cause trouble for Sky Tiger. Haha, Lord Holy Sun, why aren't you speaking? I'm waiting for your instructions. A person stood out and said to Sky Tiger with an apologetic look on his face. Then, another person walked out and said, "Yeah, why is our Lord Holy Sun so obedient today? Don't tell me he's drunk again." Drunk like mud, drunk like mud. Haha, the Sky Dragon Drunken Prawn Clan is addicted to alcohol, and they can get drunk at any time. It seems like we really came at the wrong time today. Our Lord Holy Sun is drunk again. Drunk? There were a few times when Sky Tiger relied on pretending to be drunk to avoid these guys. Speaking of which, Sky Tiger was mighty, but in reality, Sky Tiger also had its moments of suffering. At this moment, Sky Tiger looked at these fellows in silence. He didn't even dare to say a single word because he knew very well that once he answered, what awaited him would be the revenge of this group of people. Yi Xian silently watched all of this, but couldn't help but shake his head. Yi Xian didn't need a cowardly follower, so at this moment, it was impossible for Yi Xian to say that he would let this guy continue being so wretched. Sky Tiger, who are they? Yi Xian said indifferently. Hearing Yi Xian's words, everyone, including Sky Tiger, focused their gazes on Yi Xian. Even the surrounding onlookers were inexplicably astonished. These were all holy sons, and none of them were people they could easily offend. But now, he didn't expect that an outsider would actually dare to interfere. This was simply courting death. Brat, who are you? We're talking about something. What are you blabbering about? Scram to the side. We're happy today, so we can't be bothered to argue with you? A guy glanced at Yi Xian in disdain. Whether it was his gaze or tone, they were both filled with disdain. Yi Xian turned his head and smiled as he looked at that guy. However, he said indifferently, "Sky Tiger, slap your mouth." Sky Tiger's body clearly trembled. Yi Xian told him to make a move against these people, so Sky Tiger didn't dare to make a move. However, Sky Tiger didn't dare to disobey Yi Xian's orders. During this period of time, Sky Tiger knew Yi Xian's temper. If he didn't do it, then he would definitely be taken care of. Therefore, Sky Tiger hesitantly turned around and looked at Yi Xian as he carefully asked, Boss, really want to slap your mouth?" Perhaps it was because of fear, but Sky Tiger's voice was actually trembling. "Do you want me to say it a second time?" Yi Xian's gaze turned cold. Sky Tiger was so scared that cold sweat almost broke out. One had to know that the pain that came from the depths of his soul was not something an ordinary person could endure. Pah! An incomparably resounding slap to the face. Not to mention the surrounding people, even the other group of holy sons were completely dumbfounded. Sky Tiger actually dared to hit them. Moreover, it was only because of a single sentence from this person. Chapter 2879. 2467. Casually giving away ancient resources, the holy sons were overwhelmed with shock. One had to know that the reason they dared to provoke the heavenly tiger was because of the restrictions of the holy sons' nurturing rules, and also because the heavenly tiger was weak in front of them. Now, because of this mysterious person's words, the heavenly tiger was so afraid that it didn't even fear their group of people. Then, who was this mysterious person? Who are you? Do you know who we are? Another holy son pointed at Yi Xian and asked loudly. However, anyone could tell that his tone was lacking in confidence. Yi Xian turned around and casually waved his hand at that person. This time, Yi Xian didn't say anything, but Sky Tiger understood what Yi Xian meant. Pah! Another resounding slap. After these two slaps, Sky Tiger was even a little excited in his heart. These fellows had caused trouble for him more than once or twice, and every time, Sky Tiger would suffer a loss and escape. But this time, Sky Tiger actually gave them 2 slaps in the face. 2 slaps in the face had already made Sky Tiger walk out of the shadow from before. Subconsciously, Sky Tiger had always felt that Yi Xian was incomparably powerful. But now, with Yi Xian supporting him, it seemed that Sky Tiger's confidence had returned in just 2 slaps. "Sky Tiger, are you courting death?" Seeing Sky Tiger slap 2 people in a row, these people did not dare to make a move. Instead, they looked at Sky Tiger in shock and fear. After all, the identity of the son of the heavenly dragon divine general was not just for show. These people dared to bully Sky Tiger, and even kept looking for trouble with Sky Tiger. They were afraid of Sky Tiger, afraid that one day Sky Tiger would no longer be afraid of them, then they would definitely only be bullied. Therefore, this person's words to threaten Sky Tiger was actually a form of fear. "What did you say?" Sky Tiger looked at that person. This time, without Yi Xian's instructions, Sky Tiger had already walked towards that person. Yi Xian nodded his head in satisfaction. Fortunately, this fellow still had some guts. At the very least, he wasn't the kind of mud that couldn't support a wall. With some training, Sky Tiger could still become a good follower. Sky Tiger walked towards that person step by step. That person never would have thought that Sky Tiger would actually walk towards him. Subconsciously, he took 3 steps back. Perhaps if he didn't take these 3 steps back, Sky Tiger would subconsciously feel a trace of fear. However, the 3 steps this fellow took back had already allowed Sky Tiger to see through their true nature. They were just fellows who bullied the weak and feared the strong. Scram to the side. I didn't bother with you guys in the past because I gave you guys face. Today, you guys actually dare to cause trouble for me in front of my big brother. I think you guys are the ones who are tired of living. It's fine if I lose face, but if you lose face for my boss, can you afford to lose your lives? The corner of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled up. This Sky Tiger was quite smart. His words made it seem as if he was afraid of losing face for Yi Xian. Of course, no matter what Yi Xian thought, everyone else was extremely shocked in their hearts. Sky Tiger was actually afraid that this mysterious person would lose face, so he attacked him? If these words were to be said, no one in the entire demon god realm would believe it. But now it had already happened. Sky Tiger's performance wasn't bad. Yi Xian knew in his heart that since he'd grasped Sky Tiger's divine deity fragment, it was equivalent to completely controlling Sky Tiger's life and death. Sky Tiger definitely wouldn't be able to resist him. In order to obtain an obedient subordinate, it was necessary to use both kindness and power. Thus, Yi Xian casually waved his hand and saw 3 treasures hovering in midair. All right, tell these guys to scram. Take these 3 ordinary materials and go change to a bar. I'm still waiting to drink. Ordinary materials. The group of people stared blankly. Even Sky Tiger didn't immediately go to collect it. This was 3 ancient resources. The appearance of any ancient resource would probably cause a bloody storm. However, he didn't expect that the boss of Sky Tiger would casually give Sky Tiger 3 ancient resources. Who would believe this? Even Sky Tiger's father, the Heavenly Dragon Divine General, might not be willing to do so. However, the 3 ancient resources were still hovering in midair. There was no room for doubt. What is it not enough? Yi Xian interrupted Sky Tiger when he saw it in a daze. Only then did Sky Tiger react. He quickly said, "Enough, enough, boss, this is too much." Some people said in their hearts that Sky Tiger was stupid. He actually thought that giving him 3 ancient resources was too much. If he thought it was too much, then there were a lot of people here who wanted it. However, Yi Xian lightly smiled. "Just keep the things I give you. There will naturally be many benefits for you in the future." Yi Xian was speaking the truth. After all, Yi Xian was preparing to nurture the Sky Tiger as his follower, so he naturally had to nurture it. In order to cultivate it, it would inevitably consume a lot of resources. Sky Tiger glanced at Yi Xian excitedly. He didn't stand on ceremony and casually put the 3 ancient resources into his universe ring. Then, he swaggered forward. At this moment, how could the group of holy sons who had come to cause trouble for Sky Tiger dare to stop him? In fact, most of them only had envy in their hearts. After all, if Sky Tiger followed a boss who could casually give out ancient resources, then one could imagine how good his future would be. There were even people who wanted to run over to Yi Xian on the spot and beg him to accept them as his lackeys. After all, compared to strength, face and whatnot weren't that important. Unfortunately, looking at Yi Xian's cold expression, everyone knew that even if they begged Yi Xian to accept them as his lackeys, they wouldn't have a chance. Because Yi Xian didn't like them at all. If Yi Xian knew what these fellows were thinking, he would definitely be extremely depressed. After all, Yi Xian wouldn't despise these holy sons. Even if all of these holy sons became Yi Xian's lackeys, Yi Xian wouldn't mind. Of course, Sky Tiger wouldn't really exchange 3 ancient resources for wine. One had to know that ancient resources were extremely rare, and the divine power and the power of laws they contained was extremely majestic. Whether it was forging, refining pills or using it in other places, it would be very useful. For example, one of the 3 ancient resources that Yi Xian had given him was a refining material. Although it was only a small piece, if it was used sparingly, it would definitely be enough to forge 6 or 7 peerless divine weapons. If Sky Tiger was really that stupid, he probably wouldn't have the qualifications to become a holy son. After obtaining the Jade Universe fine wine that he'd ordered, Yi Xian and Sky Tiger walked out of the pavilion. He didn't even spare a glance at the group of holy sons. It wasn't until Yi Xian and Sky Tiger walked far away that those people dared to discuss and guess Yi Xian's identity. Some people said that Yi Xian was a super expert who was entrusted by the Heavenly Dragon Divine General to teach the Sky Tiger. Chapter 2880. Another primordial divine ability afterwards. Some people guessed that Yi Xian might be a core member of a certain superpower. However, Sky Tiger was already the son of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General. Then, who could be more noble than Sky Tiger? For a moment, there were many different opinions. Some even guessed that it was the illegitimate child of the demon god's divine realm's divine master. After all, the divine master of the demon god's divine realm had never had a child, so it was not impossible for an illegitimate child to appear. Unfortunately, no matter how much everyone guessed, they could only guess. No one would answer them for the real answer. Even Sky Tiger didn't know Yi Xian's true identity. Boss, didn't you say that you were going to stay in that city for the time being? Why are you leaving now? On the way, Sky Tiger asked Yi Xian in confusion. This time, the word boss came from the bottom of his heart. I don't like the environment there. Yi Xian replied indifferently. It was impossible for Yi Xian to tell Sky Tiger that he'd caused too much trouble in the Jade Universe fine wine. Not only did he attract attention, he also attracted prying eyes. In order to prevent his identity from being exposed, he left. Yi Xian would only tell Sky Tiger that he wanted to find a place with a better environment. An excuse that wasn't an excuse. Unfortunately, Sky Tiger would never doubt it. After Yi Xian heard the answer, Sky Tiger immediately started to think. A moment later, Sky Tiger said to Yi Xian, Boss, I know a place that you might like. Oh, tell me about it. In any case, Yi Xian didn't have a destination, so he might as well listen to Sky Tiger's arrangements. Boss, it's like this. Our clan has a manor outside the Falling Star Valley, where divine power is abundant, and from time to time, we can sense some star power. Moreover, that place is our clan's internal cultivation ground, and very few outsiders come in. How about we go there? Falling Star Valley? Star power? Yi Xian nodded slightly. Although he didn't know where this place was, it was still the secret cultivation ground of the Heavenly Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. All right, let's go there. Yi Xian nodded in agreement. Actually, Yi Xian knew in his heart that the Sky Tiger was returning the favor. After all, Yi Xian had given the Sky Tiger 3 ancient resources. Not to mention the Sky Tiger, even the entire Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan owed Yi Xian a favor. Therefore, Sky Tiger understood that no one would stop him from bringing Yi Xian over. The two of them hurried along the way, but it didn't take them too long to arrive at the Falling Star Valley. The origin of the name Falling Star Valley was because a star had once fallen here. Falling stars were not considered rare in the God Realm continent. The key was that this star contained a trace of star power. The power of the stars was different from the power of laws. It was hard to say which was stronger and which was weaker. However, in the God Realm where 10 suns shone, it was very difficult to see the light of the stars, let alone cultivate the power of the stars. Therefore, the power of the stars could be considered rare. Of course, it wasn't that there were no people in the God Realm who cultivated the power of the stars, but most of them gave up after cultivating for a short while. Even if the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan possessed such a treasure land, there were very few clansmen who actually came to cultivate the power of the stars. Moreover, most of them came with a strange and fun attitude. Of course, even if it was such a useless secret cultivation ground, with the tyrannical nature of the Heavenly Dragon Divine General, he would definitely not allow anyone else to enter. Therefore, the Falling Star Valley was naturally deserted. At this moment, Yi Xian was brought into the Falling Star Valley by the Sky Tiger. Although he saw many pavilions and palaces, other than a small number of servants, he didn't see any cultivators. Boss, this is the place. You can choose whichever hall you want to stay in. In any case, at this time, there should only be the two of us here. At this time? What do you mean? Oh boss, you might not know this, but in 2 months, it will be the clan's 10-year competition. Now, no one will come here to waste time. I've already greeted the servants here. Anyway, just treat this as your own home. If you need anything, just tell me. Sky Tiger casually said with a smile on his face. Sky Tiger was still very happy to be able to find a place for Yi Xian to live in. Are you going back to participate in the competition as well? Yi Xian suddenly asked Sky Tiger. When Sky Tiger heard this, he revealed an awkward expression. Boss, I'm the young patriarch, so I naturally don't need to participate in any competition. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth slightly curled up. From Sky Tiger's tone, Yi Xian already understood that there was no need for Sky Tiger to participate in the competition. Even if he did, Sky Tiger would only be at the bottom amongst those of the same level. He was known as the Holy Son of Heaven, and he had even mastered the miraculous ability of fusing with his Dharma idol. Unfortunately, Sky Tiger only knew how to drive close combat, so anyone who knew his background would be able to easily defeat him. Yi Xian had never been stingy to his own people. Even if the Sky Tiger was a divine beast from the demon god's divine domain, since it was already his little brother, Yi Xian wouldn't mistreat it. System: search for a suitable divine ability for the Sky Tiger to cultivate. as well as prepare suitable pills and magic treasures for him. Yi Xian instructed the system. Although Yi Xian knew that he wouldn't be able to avoid bleeding a lot this time, he didn't care. Ding. System notification. Found a suitable divine ability, 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant sky. Ding. System notification. Host's faith points are insufficient, unable to exchange. 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant sky? From the name, this divine ability seemed to be a set of combined skills. However, since Yi Xian had already decided to equip the Sky Tiger with a divine ability, then Yi Xian would do as he said. System, I want to use resources to exchange for this divine ability. Ding! System notification. Resources have been successfully exchanged. Abilities have been successfully exchanged. Congratulations to host for obtaining the 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant sky. No need, change him into a physical body. A moment later, a scroll that shone with a golden light appeared in Yi Xian's hand. This was the 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant sky. Although the exchange this time wasn't enough to make Yi Xian bankrupt, it wasn't much different. His faith points had been emptied, and more than half of his stored resources had been consumed. It had to be known that these resources also included the resources that Yi Xian had accumulated from killing enemies during this period of time. One could imagine just how much blood and sweat Yi Xian had put into this exchange. Sky Tiger, come here. Yi Xian shouted to the Sky Tiger. Sky Tiger naturally didn't hesitate and directly walked over to Yi Xian's side. In fact, when Yi Xian took out the scroll, Sky Tiger saw it, but he didn't think too much about it. Boss, what's the matter? Sky Tiger asked Yi Xian. Chapter 2881. Cultivating the power of the stars. Sky Tiger was slightly taken aback. At the beginning, he didn't care too much about the scroll that Yi Xian gave him. After all, there were naturally many good techniques in the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. However, techniques that were preserved in scrolls were rare. In Sky Tiger's subconscious, Bing did not feel that this scroll was that precious, so he only subconsciously opened it. However, the moment he opened the scroll, he was so shocked that he was speechless. This was an ancient divine ability. This was an ancient divine ability scroll. Sky Tiger shouted loudly in his heart, but because of his shock, he did not say a single word. Sky Tiger was the young patriarch of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan, and at the same time, he was also a holy son. Ancient divine abilities were much stronger than current divine abilities, but they had a very special characteristic. That was, every divine ability could only be cultivated by a specific group of people or physiques. Therefore, the first thing that the ancient sacred art introduced was what conditions had to be met to be able to cultivate the sacred art. As for the current sacred art, as long as one was willing, then anyone could cultivate it. Of course, the race's innate divine ability was an exception. At this moment, what Yi Xian gave him wasn't some race's innate divine ability, so it was undoubtedly an ancient divine ability. Boss, this is too precious, I can't take it. Sky Tiger quickly handed the scroll in his hand over to Yi Xian. After all, an ancient divine ability was something that only existed in legends. No matter how bold Sky Tiger was, he didn't dare to accept it so easily. What I gave you is yours. Alright, just take it. In the future, if you follow me, there will be many benefits. Don't be so surprised all day long. Yi Xian said without a care. After he finished speaking, he walked towards a large hall. Because at this moment, the system's notification had already sounded. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to host for activating the forced hidden mission, the power of the stars. Mission requirements. Within 3 months, the host must cultivate the power of the stars. If the mission fails, the host will lose half of his cultivation. If the mission succeeds, the host will receive a special reward. 3 months. Not only did this mission have a time limit, it also had a punishment. Obviously, this matter wasn't simple. Therefore, Yi Xian made the best use of his time. Sky Tiger, go back and prepare for the large competition. Cultivate well. I hope to hear good news from you. As for me, I will also try to cultivate the power of the stars. Hearing that Yi Xian was going to cultivate the power of the stars, the Sky Tiger subconsciously thought that Yi Xian was using this as an excuse to send the Sky Tiger away so that it could cultivate properly. After all, the power of the stars was publicly recognized as useless in the entire Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. Thank you, boss. Suddenly, the Sky Tiger knelt on the ground. Yi Xian had given him too much, so much that the Sky Tiger didn't know how to thank him. Yi Xian didn't stop the Sky Tiger. After all, what Yi Xian wanted was an obedient follower. Yi Xian waved his hand again, and the Sky Tiger silently retreated. As soon as the Sky Tiger left, Yi Xian immediately arrived outside the Starfall Valley. There was a stargazing platform here. If one wanted to cultivate, they would usually come here to comprehend. In the distance there was a valley. It was obvious that it was formed by a strong impact. The valley was quite large, but due to the changes of the times, the periphery was already covered with giant trees. Only in the middle, there were only circles of light that occasionally exploded out. Yi Xian knew that it was the power of the stars. The power of the stars was extremely strange. If it was the power of the laws, then one would usually have to walk in and observe in order to discover what was special about it and comprehend it. However, the power of the stars was not like this. To comprehend the power of the stars, one could only do so from a suitable location. It would be difficult to comprehend if one was too close or too far away. The strangest thing was that Yi Xian was clearly hundreds of thousands of miles away from the center of the explosion of the power of the stars. However, it was as if the power of the stars was right beside Yi Xian. It was so clear. This strange power of the stars was not the power of the laws. Therefore, whether it was comprehending or using it, it was not the same as using the power of ordinary laws. Of course, to Yi Xian, this wasn't a problem at all. System: analyze the comprehension plan and provide the most reasonable method of comprehension. Since Yi Xian had the system, then whether it was the power of the stars or the power of the laws, there wasn't much of a difference to Yi Xian. To Yi Xian, he could find the most reasonable and fastest way to comprehend it. Silently, Yi Xian directly sat in the pavilion. However, when Yi Xian closed his eyes and began to comprehend, a strange scene occurred. At the core of the star power, an illusory image of Yi Xian actually appeared. It was as if Yi Xian had already been projected into the core of the star power. However, Yi Xian didn't know about any of this. At this moment, Yi Xian had entered an extremely mystical feeling. It was as if he had already transformed into a ray of light, constantly shuttling back and forth between the stars. Green stars, blue stars, red stars, purple stars. Round, flat, irregular. All sorts of stars continuously shuttled through Yi Xian's mind. Yi Xian had already forgotten himself, forgotten everything, and wholeheartedly merged into the light of the stars. Slowly, circles of faint radiance appeared around Yi Xian. As for that radiance, it came from the core of the star. It was the power of the stars. The power of the stars slowly gathered around Yi Xian, then shuttled through his body, continuously entering and exiting. Every time he entered and exited, it would always cause Yi Xian's body to undergo a slight change. This change was small, and it could even be said that it wouldn't affect Yi Xian's body at all. However, this change was extremely important. It was precisely this change that caused Yi Xian's body to gradually accept the power of the stars. The power of the stars was different from the power of laws, so what was needed was to open up a new place to hold it. Gradually, the amount of star power that gathered around Yi Xian increased, and it became denser and denser. Perhaps Yi Xian would comprehend the power of the stars in the next moment. At the same time, the Sky Tiger had already returned to the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp tribe. However, when the Sky Tiger returned, it was immediately taken away by the clan's great elders and his father. This was because before the Sky Tiger returned, a piece of news had already reached the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. The news was naturally about the 3 ancient resources. Not to mention 3, even if it was just one ancient resource, it would be enough to cause a huge sensation. However, he didn't expect that the Sky Tiger would actually know someone and casually give out 3 ancient resources. This news naturally caused a huge reaction in the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. It was normal for the Sky Tiger to be taken away as soon as it returned. Sky Tiger, I heard that when you went out this time, someone gave you 3 ancient resources. Is that true? The person who spoke was an elder of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan. He was in charge of criminal law in the clan, so he had always been feared. Chapter 2882. Chapter 2470. Heavenly Tiger's Smugness, that's right. Disciplinary Elder. I obtained 3 ancient resources this time. But what does this have to do with you, Elder? Heavenly Tiger said without hesitation. In an instant, the disciplinary elder's expression turned unsightly. Don't be rude, Heavenly Tiger. Divine General Sky Dragon reprimanded Heavenly Tiger, but his tone wasn't too harsh, as he knew very well why the disciplinary elder would ask such a question. Divine General Sky Dragon had the highest cultivation base in the Sky Dragon Drunken Prawn tribe, but the other elders weren't too far off from him. The Sky Dragon Drunken Prawn tribe had always been opposed to giving the chosen spot to Heavenly Tiger. After all, the benefits of being a chosen were simply innumerable. Although Heavenly Tiger had fused with his Dharma form and was considered a genius, in the eyes of the other elders, Heavenly Tiger's actual combat strength was mediocre. Furthermore, they also had children, so why couldn't the chosen spot belong to their children? If Divine General Sky Dragon's status in the demon god's sacred realm hadn't been outstanding, this chosen spot would have already caused a fight. But even so, there were still many who harbored ill intentions. For example, the disciplinary elder wished he could keep an eye on Heavenly Tiger at all times so that he could find something to use against him and kick him off the chosen spot's throne. Since Heavenly Tiger had obtained an ancient resource this time, these fellows would naturally have crooked thoughts. Ancient resources were extremely precious. If they could obtain them, then not to mention their children, even their own strength would be strengthened. The main purpose of summoning Sky Tiger this time was to snatch away the 3 ancient resources in Sky Tiger's hands. However, how could the current Sky Tiger be so easily bullied? On the way back, Sky Tiger had already successfully cultivated the first move of the 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant Sky. Yi Xian's words were already like an imperial edict in Sky Tiger's heart. Although Yi Xian didn't say that he wanted Sky Dragon to obtain first place in the clan's competition. But perhaps he had said that he would wait for the good news from Sky Tiger. Therefore, Sky Tiger hoped that he could obtain first place. It was an ancient resource and an ancient divine ability. Yi Xian had given Sky Tiger so many treasures. How could Sky Tiger not be confident? Of course, with confidence one had to work hard at the same time. Thus, on the way back, Sky Tiger did not delay at all. Speaking of which, this fellow's talent was not bad. He had actually comprehended the first move of the 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant Sky on the way back. Of course, the further one went, the more difficult it would be to comprehend. At this moment, Sky Tiger had only just started. In the past, Sky Tiger had always listened to his father's words, but this time, he had actually refuted him. "Father, don't they just want me to take out the resources and distribute them to their descendants? Why? The things of my Sky Tiger were not stolen, nor were they snatched. Why should I give them to them? Then let me tell you the truth. Not only did my boss give me 3 ancient resources, but he also gave me an ancient mystic technique. Why? Do you want it too?" Ancient mystic technique. Everyone, including Divine General Sky Dragon, was indescribably shocked. One had to know that there were only a few ancient mystic techniques in the entire demon god's sacred realm. Now, Sky Tiger was telling them that someone had given him an ancient mystic technique. How could they accept this? Is what you said true? Divine General Sky Dragon couldn't help asking Sky Tiger. "Lord Father, could it be that you still don't trust me? This ancient divine ability was specially chosen by Boss for me. It's extremely compatible with me. It's called the 13 styles of the proud dragon tyrant Sky. This is impossible. Even the entire Sky Dragon Drunken Prawn tribe doesn't have a single ancient mystic technique. All we have is a remnant. Do you think we would believe you if you said someone gave you an ancient mystic technique? If the boss you speak of can give away ancient mystic techniques and ancient resources at will, why wouldn't he dare come see us?" The disciplinary elder's voice was stern. He knew very well that if what Sky Tiger said was true, then Sky Tiger's status in the tribe would soar and no one would be able to shake him. This fellow doted on his grandson very much. It could be said that if Sky Tiger had anything good, he would definitely give it to his grandson. In addition, his grandson was also very hardworking. It could be said that his combat strength was a bit stronger than Sky Tiger's. As a result, few people in the tribe would say that it was not true. "Haha, you want my boss to see you? Disciplinary elder. You think too highly of yourself. Who do you think my boss is? Even if you want to see him, I'm afraid he might not necessarily summon you." "Humph. My boss said that I can teach this ancient mystic technique to others. However, the quota is limited. I can only teach 3. Rest assured, Father, I will show you now. However, Father, you must remember that you can't teach this mystic technique to others. Otherwise, My boss will blame you and you will be in trouble. As he spoke, Sky Tiger handed the scroll to Divine General Sky Dragon. Divine General Sky Dragon did not stand on ceremony. He took it and used his spiritual force to set up a restriction before carefully opening it. The disciplinary elder was so excited that he wanted nothing more than to rush over to take a look. Unfortunately, he did not dare to do so. After all, not only was Divine General Sky Dragon powerful, but he was also the tribe leader. If he offended him, he would suffer. Divine General Sky Dragon studied it for more than 2 hours before returning the scroll to Sky Tiger. Father, do you have any enlightenment? Sigh, what a pity, Huer. This is an ancient mystic technique. Unfortunately, I can't cultivate it. It could even be said that no one can cultivate it except you. I don't know if your boss deliberately modified it, or if this sacred art is like this. If you want to cultivate this ancient sacred art, the first requirement is to fuse with your body. Therefore we can't cultivate it at all. Ah! How could this be? Yi Xianbing didn't say that he was allowed to teach it, but he didn't say that he wasn't allowed to. That was why Sky Tiger made such a decision. But from the looks of it, Yi Xian had already made arrangements. This ancient sacred art was tailor-made for him, and it would be extremely difficult for others to cultivate it. However, Huer, you don't have to worry about it. Although I can't cultivate its spirit, I can still comprehend it according to its actions. It won't be a waste of time. Divine General Sky Dragon revealed a smile. At this moment, the disciplinary elder's heart felt like it was being clawed by a cat. Divine General Sky Dragon wouldn't lie, so everything that came out of his mouth was definitely true. At this moment, he couldn't wait to take a look at the scroll. Unfortunately, he didn't dare. Chapter 2883. A misunderstanding because at this time, everyone knew that the clan had changed. The grandson of the disciplinary elder could no longer steal Sky Tiger's cultivation resources. Sky Tiger's position would be consolidated like never before, and no one could shake it. Sky Tiger left the main hall and returned to his residence. Then, he closed his door and cultivated silently. Outside his residence, hundreds of guards were guarding the side of Sky Tiger's residence. No one was allowed to disturb him. The young disciples of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan didn't understand what was going on, but they could feel the unusual atmosphere. The clan competition began very soon. What surprised all the young clansmen was that Sky Tiger participated in the competition. Moreover, from the beginning, he went on a rampage in a crushing manner. The strange attack of the Sky Tiger was not something that belonged to the clan. However, all the elders were silent. No matter how unconvinced these clansmen were, they ignored them. Until a piece of news spread that the Sky Tiger had obtained an ancient divine ability. In an instant, no one was dissatisfied. In 2 months, the Sky Tiger had only cultivated the first 3 moves. However, it was enough to defeat all enemies in 3 moves. Without any pressure, he crushed them all the way. As for the boss of the Sky Tiger, this mysterious figure had also attracted the attention of countless people. Unfortunately, there was no way to find out. The Sky Tiger had never revealed where Yi Xian was, so it was impossible for anyone to find out. At this moment, Yi Xian had already closed his eyes and cultivated for more than 2 months. In these 2 months, Yi Xian hadn't even opened his eyes, nor had he moved his body in the slightest. On this day, under the leadership of the Sky Tiger, the Heavenly Dragon Divine General and a few important members of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan had already followed them over. However, all of them waited outside silently. No one dared to take a step forward. The Sky Tiger had already used his strength to prove the authenticity of the ancient divine ability. At the same time, the 3 ancient resources had already been exchanged for suitable resources. It could be said that to the boss of the Sky Tiger, no one in the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp clan dared to be disrespectful to this incomparably mysterious figure. Everyone gathered at the entrance, waiting for Yi Xian to come out. It was fortunate that these people didn't go in to disturb Yi Xian. After all, Yi Xian was at the most critical moment. Whether or not he could successfully comprehend it would depend on these last few days. Light flashed around Yi Xian. The power of the stars had already gathered more and more, turning Yi Xian into a person of light. If someone saw Yi Xian now, they'd probably be extremely shocked. This was because Yi Xian no longer had his original appearance and was completely transparent. All of his internal organs could be seen clearly, but even his internal organs had completely turned into light. A profound and mysterious cloud of energy revolved around Yi Xian. If someone who had comprehended the power of the stars were here, they would definitely cry out in alarm. Yi Xian's current reaction was 1,000 times stronger than theirs. Star body training. This phenomenon could only be called star body training. Unfortunately, no one knew what star body refinement was. This was because no one had ever encountered such a situation. Yi Xian had already completely lost all perception of the outside world. At this moment, Yi Xian was only immersed in shuttling through countless stars. Time continued to pass as Tian Hu and the others waited silently. However, there was no movement from inside, and Yi Xian himself was experiencing an extremely great challenge. One had to know that this mission had a time limit. If Yi Xian didn't complete the mission according to the time limit, then the price of losing half of his cultivation would be enough to make Yi Xian despair. It was basically equivalent to certain death. Unfortunately, Yi Xian didn't know the passage of time at all. He didn't know that he didn't have much time left. Day after day, time slowly passed. Sky Tiger habitually raised his head to look inside. If it wasn't for his father's request, then Sky Tiger would have already rushed in to look for Yi Xian. At this moment, Sky Tiger once again looked ahead, but he couldn't hold it in any longer. He directly shouted, "Boss, can we come in?" After shouting this sentence, Tianhu silently looked forward. All of a sudden, an incomparably vicissitude yet extremely gentle aura suddenly descended. At the same time, a powerful ray of light burst forth. The light spread out with the top of everyone's heads as the center. 1 lap, 2 laps, 3 laps. Streaks of light rapidly fluctuated towards the distance. The power was not terrifying. On the contrary, it gave off a very gentle feeling. However, it was simple and ancient. What kind of power is this? The Heaven Dragon Divine General raised his head and looked at the circles of light in the sky as he subconsciously asked. Unfortunately, no one could answer him because no one had ever seen such a change before. At the same time, Yi Xian finally opened his eyes. At the same time that Yi Xian opened his eyes, the system's notification rang out. Ding! System notification. Congratulations to host for completing the Power of the Stars quest. You have received a special reward, a luxury gift bag. Obtained special material, 9-star linked pearl stone. Obtained experience points reward, level increased by 1. Ding! Host has broken through. Current high-level 4th grade Divine Emperor Realm. Luxury gift bag, 9-star linked pearl stone. The sudden reward caused Yi Xian to be slightly stunned. The reward this time could be said to be bountiful beyond Yi Xian's expectations. At this moment, Yi Xian still had to thank the Sky Tiger. One had to know that the moment Yi Xian's will returned, he already knew how much time had passed. If it wasn't for the Sky Tiger's call, Yi Xian would have died this time. Most importantly, it wasn't that Yi Xian didn't comprehend the power of the stars. On the contrary, he comprehended it too much. Yi Xian's comprehension of the power of the stars this time was quite bountiful. However, Yi Xian helplessly discovered that at least for now, he could only occasionally use the power of the stars because there was almost nowhere to replenish it. The 10 suns of the God realm revolved around him, and the power of the stars had long since been blocked. Yi Xian didn't open the gift bag. Instead, he silently stood up and walked outside. At this moment, the light of the stars hadn't completely disappeared from Yi Xian's body, so any movement he made would bring along countless illusions. Those weren't illusions left behind by moving too quickly, nor were they illusions left behind by illusions. Instead, they were naturally formed by the power of the stars. Yi Xian walked forward, but behind him was a large string of light phantoms. The moment he walked out, everyone was shocked. The Heaven Dragon Divine General and the others didn't know that Yi Xian's current situation was only because of the power of the stars, so they couldn't explain Yi Xian's current situation. Most importantly, the Heaven Dragon Divine General's cultivation was profound. Even if he didn't use his spiritual will, he could still see a lot of things with just his eyes. Physical clone. Divine General Heaven Dragon murmured in a very low voice. However, who couldn't hear the people around them? Hearing the words corporeal doppelganger, everyone was shocked. A physical clone represented a divine ability, and at the same time, it also represented a kind of identity. Chapter 2884. Luolua's new Cluet was a physical clone. Everyone, including Divine General Tianlong, was speechless. Of course, given their knowledge, they could tell that this was only the most basic form, or that he had just started cultivating. However, only the divine masters of the demon god's sacred territory possessed the ability to create a physical clone. Therefore, they were certain that this person had a close relationship with a divine master. This made many things clear. Why was this person able to give Sky Tiger 3 primordial resources and an ancient divine ability right off the bat? Perhaps only a divine master could have such a deep foundation. Of course, this was just a huge misunderstanding. How could Yi Xian have any relationship with the divine master of the demon god's domain? In fact, he hadn't even seen the divine master before. If there was any relationship, it would be that Yi Xian was preparing to find Luo Luo from the hands of the demon god's domain's divine master. "Boss, you're finally out?" Sky Tiger said in surprise. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth curled up slightly. In reality, he was still slightly afraid. After all, among the people standing in front of him, which one of them didn't emit a powerful aura? This made Yi Xian very clear that any one of them would be able to take him down in an instant. However, since these people didn't use their spiritual will to probe him, nor did they attack him immediately, it meant that they didn't have any ill intentions towards him. "Who are these people?" Yi Xian asked Sky Tiger. When Sky Tiger heard Yi Xian's question, he immediately introduced them to him. It turned out that because of the Sky Tiger's ancient divine ability, the Heavenly Dragon Divine General and the others wanted to meet the boss of the Sky Tiger, which was why they made this trip. After Sky Tiger finished his introduction, Yi Xian was even more shocked. He didn't expect that he'd meet a great general of the demon god's divine domain so quickly. Of course, Yi Xian didn't reveal any unnecessary expressions at this moment. Instead, he calmly responded. After chatting with the Heaven Dragon Divine General for a while, the Heaven Dragon Divine General and the others left. A huge misunderstanding had already caused the people of the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp Clan to only fear and not doubt Yi Xian. As for Yi Xian, it was naturally impossible for him to offend these people, much less have a deep relationship with them. Thus, this meeting was somewhat indifferent. After the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp Clan left, Sky Tiger excitedly said to Yi Xian, "Boss, fortunately, I did not disappoint you. This time, I have successfully obtained first place in the clan's competition." Sky Tiger had actually been holding back these words for a long time. In his heart, this was the mission that Yi Xian had given him, so he naturally had to do it well. However, to Yi Xian, he didn't take it too seriously. Therefore, Yi Xian only nodded his head before saying to Sky Tiger, "Let's go, let's leave this place." The Heaven Dragon Divine General and the others already knew that Yi Xian was here, so this place wasn't safe anymore. Thus, Yi Xian had no choice but to leave. "Boss, where are you going? Didn't you say you wanted to comprehend the power of the stars here? Why are you leaving?" "I have already comprehended the power of the stars here, so there is no reason for me to stay. As for where I go, it doesn't matter. I'll just go wherever I go." Yi Xian simply wanted to leave this place. As for his destination, he didn't have one. If he wanted to return to the Kunlun Divine Domain, he would need to go to the residences of the 8 great divine generals. Only there would be a passageway, and if Yi Xian were to mention borrowing the Sky Dragon Drunken Shrimp Clan to the Kunlun Divine Domain, it would immediately arouse suspicion. At this moment, it was impossible for Yi Xian to contend against the 8 great divine generals. Thus, provoking any one of the 8 great divine generals was an unwise choice. It might be possible to search for Luo Luo's whereabouts, but he had a Sky Tiger by his side. Thus, perhaps the Sky Tiger's mouth would be able to obtain some useful information. As the two of them walked, Yi Xian asked Sky Tiger, "Sky Tiger, do you know that there is a holy son of the 9 paths?" Sky Tiger looked at Yi Xian in confusion. "Boss, you also know about the 9 Dao Saints?" "The 9 Dao Saints?" Yi Xian frowned slightly. It seemed that Luo Luo's identity in the demon god's domain wasn't simple. "Yes, he is the saint of the 9 Daos. Every saint has his own title. For example, the other saints call me the Heaven Dragon Saint. However, the saint of the 9 Daos is very special. It is said that he is not from the demon god's celestial realm. The 9-tailed heaven-loathing fox has a very high status. Even the Lord God has to respect the saint of the 9 Daos. Moreover, the saint of the 9 Daos is highly regarded by the Lord God." Tianhu simply told him what he knew. However, It wasn't of much use to Yi Xian. After talking for a long time, it could be summarized in one sentence. That was, Yi Xian was powerless to save Luo Luo. It had to be known that it was impossible for the divine master of the demon god's domain to allow Luo Luo to go into seclusion because he valued her. It was probably because Luo Luo was constantly thinking of leaving the demon god's domain to find Yi Xian. Therefore, the divine master of the demon god's domain could only trap Luo Luo. When they arrived in the god realm, Yi Xian and Luo Luo had separated. Therefore, it was impossible for Luo Luo to know that Yi Xian was in the Kunlun divine domain. Nor did she know about the conflict between Yi Xian and the demon god's domain. Perhaps the current Luo Luo wouldn't suffer any grievances in the demon god's domain. On the contrary, because of his noble identity, it was very likely that he would be valued. After a period of analysis, Yi Xian roughly knew that Luo Luo wouldn't be wronged, so there was no need to rush to find her. However, Yi Xian didn't know that ever since he'd arrived at the demon god's domain, Luo Luo had been a little anxious. There was a special connection between Yi Xian and Luo Luo. Due to the uniqueness of the demon god's domain, after Yi Xian arrived at the demon god's domain, his ability to sense was suppressed by a portion, causing Yi Xian to be unable to accurately locate Luo Luo. However, because Yi Xian had arrived at the demon god's domain, Luo Luo's perception had been strengthened. It could be said that every time Yi Xian moved, Luo Luo could clearly sense it. Luo Luo was very clear that Yi Xian had come here for her. How could Luo Luo not know what had happened to the human race in the demon god's domain? Therefore, Luo Luo was still extremely worried about Yi Xian. Unfortunately, there was nothing she could do. From the moment she arrived in the god realm, she had been brought here by a mysterious force. It could even be said that even the divine masters of the demon god's domain had to bow their heads in front of this force. This was a super large force, and at the same time it was also a peerless expert. Luo Luo didn't know who this person was, but his every move, every word, and every action was under this person's surveillance. Even if he was the holy son of the demon god's domain, it was only that person's arrangement. Of course, Luo Luo could feel that person's goodwill. Chapter 2885. 2473 Yellow Sand Zone. Yi Xian and Sky Tiger continuously traversed thousands of realms in order to reach a dangerous place. At this moment, Sky Tiger stood behind Yi Xian and hesitantly asked, "Boss, are we really going to enter this place? Since you're already here, do you want to go in?" Yi Xian indifferently said as he looked at the boundless yellow sand in front of him. This was a place that Yi Xian had deliberately chosen because this time, Yi Xian was prepared to increase his strength in one go. At this moment, Yi Xian realized that everything he wanted to do was because of his cultivation realm. Insufficient strength. Therefore, this time, Yi Xian was prepared to level up crazily. First, it was the mysterious trial. Because Yi Xian wasn't strong enough, he didn't even have the qualifications to participate, so he could only teleport out. After that, it was Luoluo's matter, and then he left the demon god's domain. In short, everything was because he wasn't strong enough, and if he stayed outside, he would have to worry about his identity being exposed and being hunted down. Therefore, there weren't many choices left for Yi Xian. Entering this place and quickly increasing his strength might be the only choice. At this moment, the yellow sand that Yi Xian saw was quite famous in the demon god's domain. This place was called the Drought Sea. The Drought Sea was enormous, but even divine beasts didn't dare to rashly enter its interior. This was because not only did the Drought Sea have an extremely violent natural climate, it also had the ancient beast clan. It was said that the formation of the Drought Sea came from a huge explosion. In ancient times, when the gods fought, the Drought Sea was also a very famous battlefield. Thousands of powerful ancient supreme experts fought here. They tore the void and trampled on the mountains and rivers, but for some reason, they actually broke through a secret realm. It was a completely isolated secret realm that belonged to the ancient beast clan. The remaining experts were hunted down by the ancient beast clan and died one by one. After the secret realm exploded, everything inside the secret realm was scattered here. The yellow sand zone was only the outermost area of the Drought Sea. As for the inside, it was even more terrifying. According to Sky Tiger, even the Lord God had come here personally, but he had only entered for less than 10 days before retreating with a face full of fear. This was because there was a super powerful existence in the Drought Sea, an existence that even the divine master of the demon god realm couldn't do anything to. Fortunately, the Drought Sea had not moved for millions of years, as if it was an independent place that was not affected by anything from the outside world. In fact, some experts from the demon god realm would also form teams to enter the Drought Sea to search for treasures. After all, there were many special resources in the Drought Sea, and the ancient beasts were also very valuable. The ancient beasts did not have the ability to transform, nor did they have high intelligence. Moreover, they all cultivated their physical strength. Sky Tiger said that the reason why he could fuse with the Dharma idol was because his father, the Heaven Dragon Divine General, had entered this place when he was young and had some fortuitous encounters. Then, he combined it with his own understanding and compiled the cultivation method of the Dharma idol fusion. Therefore, Yi Xian chose this place. He chose the Drought Sea. Since the ancient beast clan was so mysterious, it would definitely allow Yi Xian to quickly increase his strength. Fear. Perhaps others would be afraid, but Yi Xian wouldn't. For Yi Xian, he was fearless. The Drought Sea had powerful ancient beasts, so it was the best place for Yi Xian to cultivate. After all, Yi Xian needed to devour to quickly increase his level. Yi Xian didn't want to wait any longer. He'd waited for too long. It was time to explode. There were still many things waiting for Yi Xian to do. He couldn't waste too much time in the demon god realm. If you don't want to go in, wait for me outside. I'll come out and find you. Yi Xian indifferently said to Sky Tiger. After that, he no longer paid any attention to Sky Tiger and directly walked forward. Actually, it was a good thing for Yi Xian not to bring Sky Tiger with him. After all, if Sky Tiger went with him, then some of Yi Xian's secrets would be exposed. At least for now, Sky Tiger didn't have the qualifications to know Yi Xian's secrets. Sky Tiger hesitated for a moment. By the time he wanted to chase after him, it was already too late. Yi Xian's figure had already disappeared, so he could only stay where he was and cultivate while waiting for Yi Xian to return. After entering the yellow sand zone, there was nothing special about it at first. There was only an isolation belt that stretched as far as the eye could see. Here, whether it was the stone god beast or the ancient beast, they rarely came here. However, it was precisely because of this that there were humans here. Yi Xian maintained the release of his spiritual will the entire time, so it didn't take long for him to find a small human tribe. This was a tribe that relied on an oasis. There were only a few hundred people, but it seemed rather peaceful. Yi Xian didn't hesitate as he directly walked over. The people here all had very low cultivations. They made some simple magic treasures to protect their homes. At the same time, they hunted some weak ancient beasts or divine beasts to cultivate. At this moment, the sudden sight of Yi Xian in the yellow sand immediately attracted the attention of the people here. Dad, there's someone in the desert!" a youth shouted loudly. A moment later, he saw a burly man rushing over. He was holding a large blade made of unknown materials in his hand. There were a few people following behind him. "Go in, quickly go into the house. There's a formation in the house. If the situation isn't right, activate the formation immediately," the burly man shouted loudly. Very quickly, everyone around the oasis hid in the only stone house in the oasis. Yi Xian knew what these people were worried about, so he didn't mind and continued to walk over. "Halt! Who are you?" "I'm Yi Xian. I'm passing by and would like to rest in your place." After all, he was a human. It wasn't easy to meet a free human in the demon god's domain, so how could Yi Xian go find trouble with these people? You're a human?" The burly man hesitated for a moment, but he recognized Yi Xian's identity and asked hesitantly. "Yes, I'm a human." Of course Yi Xian wouldn't hide it and directly returned. "It's actually a human. Haha, quick, please come in." When they heard that they were from the same clan, those people didn't stop Yi Xian and quickly welcomed him in. "Haha, brother. Don't blame me. You should know that if we don't raise our vigilance, we might be eaten by divine beasts or ancient beasts one day. May I ask which tribe you're from?" "I'm not from here but from the outside. This time, I'm here to investigate the interior." "What? You want to go in? I say, brother, aren't you too bold? Although the lives of our human race are as cheap as grass here, there's no need to humiliate yourself like this. If you go in now, you're simply courting death." Chapter 2886. 2474 God slaying set. When the robust man saw that Yi Xian didn't say anything, He hesitated for a moment before handing over a green card to Yi Xian. "Brother, take this. It might be of help to you." Yi Xian picked up the card. It was still made of an unknown material, but there was an ancient word Bing sealed on it. "What is this?" Yi Xian asked in confusion. "What is this?" "We don't know either. This thing was accidentally obtained from an ancient beast when we were hunting. Although we don't know what it is, we do know that as long as you use your spiritual will to activate it, it can condense the image of an ancient beast and protect you." Card. Ancient beast phantom? Yi Xian was slightly stunned. It seemed that there really was a secret in the Drought Sea that belonged to him. "I don't need this anymore. After all, I'm afraid this thing will be of great use to you guys." The burly man hesitated for a moment, but this thing was extremely useful to them. It could be said that they had relied on this thing to help them hunt ancient beasts a few times, and it was also because of this thing that they had been able to withstand the attacks of several divine beasts. The burly man frowned. The human race that lived in the Drought Sea had a tradition. Once they met a fellow race member that needed help, they would do their best to help. After all, it was not easy to survive here. If they did not help each other, the human race would have long since been removed from this place. At this moment, seeing Yi Xian refuse, the robust man felt guilty in his heart. After hesitating for a moment, the burly man's eyes suddenly lit up, and he took out a round plate. "Brother, since you don't want the card, I'll give this to you. To be honest, we've only activated it once when we obtained it. At that time, we managed to summon over 10 powerful ancient beasts. Unfortunately, for some reason, we couldn't use it anymore. So, even though this thing is powerful, I can't tell you how to use it. Take it first. Who knows, it might be of some help to you on the way." Yi Xian did not understand the tradition of helping each other in the Drought Sea, but he knew how to repay kindness. These people were able to help him the first time they met, so Yi Xian would not be stingy. "All right, I'll accept this. These pills are for you. Distribute them to your clansmen. It will be beneficial to your clansmen." The burly man didn't know that the pills Yi Xian gave him were cultivation pills that were difficult to obtain outside. Therefore, he accepted them without hesitation. After Yi Xian left the tribe, he took out the strange disc as he walked. "What is this?" Yi Xian was puzzled. The disc's shape was extremely simple. If it wasn't for the burly man's introduction, Yi Xian would have thought that it was a plate for storing vegetables. Of course, it was obvious that this thing wasn't that simple. "System, detect this thing." Yi Xian said to the system. Ding. System prompt. Host's resources are insufficient, unable to detect. Insufficient resources? Could the system be talking about faith value? System, then I will use the resources to exchange for faith value detection. Ding. System prompt. Host's resources are insufficient, unable to exchange for enough faith value. Yi Xian's footsteps abruptly stopped. What did he mean? All of his resources added up wasn't enough to detect such a thing? Just what was this thing? Was it that strange? Yi Xian didn't believe that he really couldn't do anything to this thing. System, open that gift bag for me. Yi Xian had completed the star power quest earlier and obtained a gift bag as well as a 9-star linked pearl stone. However, he hadn't used it. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted to use the gift bag because of a plate. Ding. System prompt. Special gift bag has been successfully opened. Congratulations to host for obtaining 1-point gift bag, 1 magic treasure gift bag, and 1 unknown gift bag. What was going on? He opened a gift bag, and in the end, he opened 3 gift bags? After Yi Xian recovered from his astonishment, he was pleasantly surprised. Yi Xian didn't need to wash his hair to explain the gift bag. He would either give him devouring points, eternal points, or faith points. But no matter what it was, one thing was certain, it was all good stuff. System, open the gift bag first. Yi Xian wanted to see what he could obtain. It would be best if he could obtain eternal points. Although he hadn't obtained devouring points in a long time, eternal points seemed to be more useful. Ding. System prompt. Congratulations to host for obtaining 1 million faith points, 100 eternal points, and 10 devouring points. Yi Xian was dumbfounded. He even felt that happiness had come too suddenly. 1 million faith points wasn't much, but the key was the eternal points. A total of 100 eternal points. This was something that Yi Xian didn't dare to imagine. What did 100 faith points mean? Even if he used the eternal domain, he could use it 20 times. This time, just by opening the gift bag, he actually gave Yi Xian such a big prize. How could Yi Xian not be excited? 10 devouring points. Yi Xian didn't know if it was because of the increase in his cultivation or because of Yi Xian's bad luck, but he hadn't encountered a devouring beast in a long time, let alone obtained devouring points. But at this moment, he obtained 10 devouring points in one go. Combined with suitable resources, wouldn't Yi Xian be able to change his clothes this time? Even Yi Xian couldn't remain calm at this moment. The reward for this gift bag was simply too generous. Suppressing the excitement in his heart, Yi Xian continued to say to the system, "System, open the magic treasure gift bag." It was obvious that the magic treasure gift bag could open a magic treasure. In that case, the points gift bag had given Yi Xian such a big surprise. What kind of surprise would the magic treasure gift bag give Yi Xian? Ding! System notification, congratulations to host. You have obtained a special scroll, a complete set scroll. Set perfection scroll, able to choose suitable resources, according to the host's wishes, directly complete the set of more than 2 parts that the host has. Shock, ecstasy. Yi Xian didn't know how to describe his current feelings. Although it was only a scroll, its value was simply immeasurable. For example, Yi Xian possessed the God-slaughtering sword and the God-slaughtering armor. Didn't that mean that Yi Xian could use this complete set scroll to forge the entire God-slaughtering set in one go? Although Yi Xian had to provide the resources himself. However, one had to know that compared to resources, forging a magic treasure on the level of the God-slaughtering set was probably even more difficult. In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian's hand that was holding the scroll actually trembled slightly. Unfortunately, when Yi Xian saw the materials used to forge the God-slaughtering set, his expression turned unsightly. Chapter 2887. 2475. The system was so scared that it upgraded. Where would Yi Xian go to get this thing? This was the God Emperor realm. What was the God Emperor realm? It was an expert on the level of the Divine Lord like Mi Ming. The system actually wanted Yi Xian to get the Divine Lord's divine deity. Moreover, it wanted to get 5 of them. Yi Xian had only come into contact with 2 God Domain Masters after being in the God realm for so long. One was the Kunlun God Domain's Divine Master, Mi Ming, and the other was the Demon God Domain's Divine Master. However, forging a God-slaying set required 5 Divine Lord Divine Deity, and it was a complete Divine Deity. At this moment, Yi Xian put away the scroll without hesitation. This was because he knew that with his current strength, he was unable to prepare all the materials. Of course, just because he couldn't do it now didn't mean he couldn't do it in the future. There was still the last gift bag. As for this last gift bag, it was probably the most special gift bag. Just what kind of surprise would it bring to Yi Xian? System, open that unknown gift bag. Yi Xian said indifferently. His tone was calm, but his entire mind was focused. Ding, system notification. Ding, warning, warning, the host has received a super strong reward, the system has entered an emergency upgrade. Ding, warning, warning, host please note, the system will be forcefully shut down for 3 months. Yi Xian was stupefied. What did he open up that directly upgraded the system? Moreover, it was an emergency upgrade. Yi Xian subconsciously shouted at the system a few times in his heart. Unfortunately, there was no reaction. In other words, the system had already gone to upgrade. However, the key was that Yi Xian didn't even know what he'd done. Wasn't it just an unknown gift bag? Was there a need to make such a big fuss? Fortunately, it was only 3 months, so it wasn't unacceptable. This is great. I can't detect what this plate is used for. Forget it, let's just leave it for now. Yi Xian had a bitter smile on his face. This kind of situation was completely out of his expectations, and it was something that Yi Xian had never encountered before. During the 3 months that the system was upgraded, Yi Xian didn't plan on causing trouble. After all, without the system, Yi Xian's strength would still decrease. Most importantly, even if he killed an ancient beast or a divine beast, he wouldn't gain any experience. Thus, killing them would be for nothing. However, it was still necessary to hurry. Yi Xian didn't plan on looking for trouble, but that didn't mean that trouble wouldn't come looking for him. On this day, Yi Xian walked through the Yellow Sand Zone as usual. Although the Yellow Sand Zone was only the outermost region of the Drought Sea, however, The Drought Sea was extremely vast. According to Tianhu, the Drought Sea occupied 1/5 of the demon god's celestial territory. With such a huge area, even if it was the outer area of his territory, it was still not something that could be walked over quickly. After all, there wasn't even a map here, and from time to time, he would take the wrong path. Whether it was his divine sense or his eyes, they were all useless in this yellow sand zone. The yellow sand zone had a strange restriction that was enough to make anyone who entered lose all sense of direction. It was said that there was once someone who was trapped in this yellow sand zone for 10,000 years. Moreover, that person was lucky and did not encounter the disaster of the yellow sand zone, which was why he was able to survive. But this time, Yi Xian wasn't that lucky. He encountered the most ordinary disaster in the yellow sand zone. Law Storm. Due to the special location of the yellow sand zone, the other law powers were relatively rare. However, there were a few types of law powers that were too much. One of them was the law of wind. It could be said that the yellow sand zone was filled with strong winds at all times. However, it wouldn't be affected in the slightest during normal times. After all, even the simplest protective divine power would be enough to resist these gales. However, once he encountered a storm of laws, it would be tragic. The storm of laws was precisely because the power of the laws of wind was too concentrated in a certain area, causing it to automatically produce a phenomenon of balance. Through the form of a storm, the power of the laws of wind was eliminated. Even the power of the laws could be eliminated. One could imagine how terrifying that power was. There was no sign of the formation of the storm of laws. At this moment, Yi Xian was walking as usual. However, the instant he took a step forward, a sudden change occurred between heaven and earth. A violent and terrifying aura instantly overturned the heavens and the earth. Yi Xian didn't even have the slightest ability to resist as he was directly brought into the sky. When he stabilized his body and looked over, heaven and earth had long since become indistinguishable. At this moment, it was as if Yi Xian had been brought into an unknown space. Above his head, his feet were small, and his surroundings seemed to be the sky, yet also seemed to be the earth. It was incomparably strange. Boom! A divine dragon condensed from the laws directly charged towards Yi Xian. That was a pure life form of the laws, and it was actually formed in an instant. However, before Yi Xian could even react, the law divine dragon instantly disintegrated. The storm of laws wasn't really a storm. The reason why it was called a storm was because it had something in common with a storm. That was they both had an eye. Fortunately, Yi Xian was currently in the eye of the wind. Unfortunately, Yi Xian couldn't move an inch at this moment. He could only watch the terrifying changes in the outside world. One by one, the law life forms quickly appeared. The law dragon, the law tiger, and even the law Kuan Peng. However, these law life forms would not last long from the moment they appeared to the moment they disappeared. This was because they were all wind elemental law life forms. The main reason for the appearance of the law storm was because there were too many laws of wind being repaired. At this moment, Yi Xian personally witnessed a miracle. A miracle that others would never be able to see in their entire lives. In the blink of an eye, a law life was born and died in an instant. Other than Yi Xian, no one else knew of their appearance. Perhaps, Yi Xian's eyes were their only witness. Because of Yi Xian, all of them had existed. At this moment, Yi Xian couldn't release his divine will at all. Yi Xian had tried, but he'd only released a trace of his divine will before being swept away by the storm of laws. Therefore, Yi Xian's eyes were the only witness. Everything that had happened. Those law life forms didn't seem to know what they were experiencing. It was as if their lives should only belong to that instant of blooming. The storm of laws condensed the excess wind laws into life forms, and then quickly let them die. Through this method, the excess power of laws was eliminated. However, this process was incomparably natural. After all, this was the result of the balance of nature. This was the result of the laws of the great Tao. Only in the eyes of Yi Xian, a witness, felt sorrow for those law life forms. Yi Xian was a witness. He was able to personally witness how these strange law life forms were born and how they died. Chapter 2888. The withered bone sword servants were constantly investigating this secret. However, their strength and abilities were limited, so they couldn't find much useful information. It was the same for the members of the Fire Clan. They weren't strong enough to come into contact with this secret. As for news from the 100 Calculators sect, they hadn't reported back yet. Yi Xian had asked twice, but he only knew that the 100 Calculators sect had already sent people out of Mo Shangji's territory to investigate, but they still hadn't found anything. It seemed that they could only take their time in finding Luo Luo. However, what Yi Xian didn't know was that the calm on the surface was just the eve before the storm. QWPM at this time, a mysterious force had already gathered together to get Yi Xian, or even take Yi Xian's life. In the end, what was to come would come. On this day, Yi Xian was bored as he stayed in the training camp. One had to know that in the training camp, Yi Xian was only interested in the history of the God realm. If he really wanted to talk about the cultivation of divine abilities, Yi Xian wouldn't take a fancy to it. However, the originally peaceful days were disrupted by the intrusion of a young girl. Yi Xian Gongzi, quick, come with me. Yi Xian didn't know this young girl. Why was she looking for him so anxiously? Who are you? Why are you looking for me? Aya, Yi Xian Gongzi, come with me quickly. If you don't leave now, it will be too late. Fian will definitely be taken away by them. What Fian? Yi Xian was shocked. He immediately stood up and rushed out with the young girl. Along the way, Yi Xian roughly understood what had happened. It turned out that Fian would make food for Yi Xian every half a month. Although a portion of those ingredients were directly exchanged from the training camp, there were still some that were exchanged from outside. Among them, especially the ingredients for the divine beasts, most of them could only be exchanged from outside. Today, Fian and this young girl called Luo Qi went to an inn together to get the divine beast ingredients that had already been ordered. This ingredient was something that Fian had exchanged for in the training camp long ago. Logically speaking, there was no problem. However, when they arrived at the inn, they were immediately surrounded by a group of people. These people came inexplicably, causing Fei Yan and the young girl to be unable to react in time. Luo Qi was only an inferior heavenly god, and Fei Yan was only a deity. The people surrounding them were 5 low-level heavenly gods, 2 mid-level heavenly gods, and 1 high-level heavenly god. It could be said that they had no chance of winning. At the last moment, Fian used a special method to teleport Luo Qi away. Luo Qi immediately thought of Yi Xian. Because in Luo Qi's heart, Yi Xian was a very important figure, and even Fian was only his maid. Therefore, he didn't hesitate and directly ran to find Yi Xian. The two of them moved very quickly, and it didn't take long for them to arrive at the inn. At this time, there were quite a few people gathered around the inn. However, they were all watching and no one interfered. Did you hear? That girl is actually a slave. Those people surrounding her are from the slave pavilion. Not only do the slave pavilion often get slaves, they also catch runaway slaves. That girl is really unlucky. Looking at her now, she seems to be doing well. I didn't expect her to be a slave. What a pity. Yi Xian heard the discussion from afar. Naturally, he was sure that it was Fian. Damn it! Who said that Fian was a slave? In Yi Xian's heart, he had never treated Fian as a slave, not even for a moment. Slave pavilion. What a good slave pavilion. Who gave them all their strength to capture people? Boom. Yi Xian's figure moved and directly rushed into the inn. At this time, a faint restriction was set up around Fian's body. Clearly, this was a defensive restriction set up by Fian herself. Around her, 8 people looked at Fian calmly. Haha, lowly slave, I want to see how long you can hold on. It doesn't matter. Uncle has time to play with you. It turned out that outside the restriction set up by Fian, these people had set up a special restriction that was constantly wearing down Fian's defensive restriction. With the strength of 8 people suppressing Fian, how could Fian resist? Suddenly seeing Yi Xian come in, the person closest to Yi Xian said casually, "Young man, watch the show and stand further away. Our slave pavilion is capturing runaway slaves. Be careful not to accidentally injure you later. Accidentally injure your uncle." Suddenly, Yi Xian attacked. Once he attacked, it was with all his strength. Deity vanquishing slash. Go to hell. This sword attack was launched by Yi Xian in anger, without the slightest mercy. Boom. One sword, just one sword, killed that person in an instant. Even the rest of the people in the slave pavilion did not have time to react. They only reacted when Yi Xian killed someone. Damn it, brat, do you know who we are? But before this person could finish, he was interrupted by Yi Xian. And it was done with the god-slaying sword. Boom. Another sword attack, still as violent as before. Another slave pavilion disciple was directly killed on the spot. The remaining 6 people did not dare to be careless. They immediately retreated and pulled away from Yi Xian. Seeing Yi Xian kill people, the surrounding people all showed a strange expression. Many people also took the initiative to retreat. However, Yi Xian did not care so much now. He directly attacked. Without even seeing Yi Xian move, he directly broke the restrictions set up by the people in the slave pavilion. "Girl, are you all right?" Yi Xian looked at Fian with concern in his eyes. "I've made you worry. This little girl deserves death." "What did you say? These people dare to have ideas about you. Come here and help me take care of this girl. I want to kill all these people." Yi Xian said the latter half of the sentence to Luo Qi. At this time, Luo Qi was dumbfounded. In her eyes, although Yi Xian's strength had increased to the mid-true god realm, Yi Xian had only just leveled up. However, Yi Xian was facing 8 slave pavilion disciples who were not weaker than him. He did not hesitate to attack and even killed 2 of them in succession. "Oh, okay. Luo Qi was already stuttering. However, she quickly rushed to Fian's side and carefully protected her. "Are you her master?" At this time, the leading heavenly god looked at Yi Xian. His eyes were filled with anger, but he suppressed his anger and asked Yi Xian. Would Yi Xian answer him? No, he would not. In Yi Xian's mind, there was only one path for these people, and that was death. Therefore, Yi Xian slowly turned around and clenched the god-slaying sword in his hand. The environment here was not suitable for summoning the 1,000-beast sword servants. However, Yi Xian was alone and would not be afraid of these people. "Boy, since you are her master, then things will be easy. Our slave pavilion is willing to pay a high price for this slave. Name a price." It turned out that they just wanted to snatch her. "Name a price? Okay, I'll give you a price." God-slaying slash. Chapter 2889. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Overbearing and domineering. The 10,000 or so ladle commanders also varied in size. The largest one had a diameter of more than 10 meters. There were about 10 of them, while the others were all about 3 meters tall. There were almost 10,000 of them. Whoosh! As it circled incessantly, the black weeping soul horn hovering above the million-soldier army appeared to be unable to make a decision. It was still circling even after a dozen seconds had passed. The million-strong army trembled and did not dare to act rashly in the face of all this. However, Yi Xian and Barakai were the same. They had already stopped and looked ahead with shock and vigilance. Their minds were in a mess. After all, everything had happened too suddenly, and the result was so strange. It was just a black horn, but it could be so ferocious. It was simply unacceptable. As for the mosquito prince Xue Ben, he had already been taken into Yi Xian's beast ring when the black weeping soul horn pierced into the Void Ladle Emperor's back. On the one hand, he was worried that the black weeping soul horn would become interested in Xue Ben and turn around to deal with Xue Ben after absorbing the Void Ladle Emperor. After all, the latter was at least an origin realm existence. On the other hand, he was worried that Xue Ben would take the initiative to provoke the black weeping soul horn. If that happened, they would be in big trouble. Unfortunately, when trouble really came, there was no way to avoid it. Besides, this so-called big trouble had actually come out of Yi Xian's body in the first place. It might not necessarily not come back after it was done with its business. The current situation was exactly the same. In his line of sight, the black weeping soul giant horn that was circling endlessly in the black hole in front of him hesitated for a moment, but in the end, it didn't attack again. It abruptly turned around, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a black streak of light that shot towards the direction of Yi Xian and the master and servant. The speed at which it came seemed to be 30% faster than when it left. Moreover, as it rapidly approached, its enormous body, which was over 10 feet in size, was also rapidly changing during the process of shooting, just like before. The only difference was that when the black weeping soul horn shot out from Yi Xian's body, it was originally a black streak of light that was as small as a speck of dust. Then, it expanded with the wind and rapidly expanded. But now, as it turned around and shot back, the change in its shape happened to be the opposite of before. The originally huge black curved horn was also shrinking at a speed that was visible to the naked eye, so fast that it was shocking. This was clearly the rhythm of turning into a black light that was like a speck of dust and returning to the undying world within Yi Xian's body. Damn it! What does this guy think I am? A free lair or cave? Yi Xian saw through the black weeping soulhorn's plan at a glance. As he cried out in alarm, his expression changed completely. Gloomy as water, a dark light flashed in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, he had already summoned the Dongshu shuttle that he had kept in his body. Let's leave immediately. We can't let this damned black horn bother us again. The last sentence seemed to be directed at Barakai, who was beside him, but in fact, it was the portrayal of Yi Xian's true intentions. The reason why he kept the black weeping soul horn in his undying world was because he thought that it was extraordinary. But no matter how extraordinary it was, in Yi Xian's eyes, this black horn was just a dead object. But now it was completely different. When he thought about how the other party could easily kill the terrifying Void Ladybird Emperor in an instant, Yi Xian felt a chill down his back. Such a terrifying existence had been hiding in the undying world in his body for a period of time. This was simply too terrifying. Because of this, Yi Xian was almost scared senseless when he saw the black weeping soul horn turn around and head towards him. The only thought in his mind at this moment was to quickly leave this place. The faster the better. Swish! Just as he and Barakai's shoulders shook and their figures rushed into the Dongshu shuttle that Yi Xian had summoned, the black weeping soul horn whistled from afar. At this moment, at the same time Yi Xian stepped into the Dongshu shuttle, it turned into a black streak of light that was like a speck of dust and directly entered his body, disappearing in an instant. Bang! Bang! Seeing this scene from the corner of his eye, Yi Xian's heart suddenly trembled. He had just stepped into the Dongshu shuttle's inner cabin when he almost fell to the ground. Damned black horn, get the hell out here! In the blink of an eye, Yi Xian's face had turned as white as a sheet of paper. He gritted his teeth and roared out loud, giving Hao Fengfeng, who was in the cabin, a huge fright. She subconsciously replied, "What's wrong? Why are you calling me out? Why do you have to do with everything? Go play at the side." Yi Xian was almost angered to death. As he spoke, he glared fiercely at Hao Fengfeng, turned around and immediately rushed out of the Dongshu shuttle. Barakai did not ask any further and followed closely behind. The reason why he had taken out his battleship and quickly rushed into it was to escape from this place and avoid the entanglement of the black weeping soul horn. But now that he had successfully entered the immortal realm, there was no point in staying in the Dongshu shuttle. After all, the trouble with the black weeping soul horn was not something that could be solved in a short period of time. And outside the black hole, there were still a large number of void soldiers that needed to be dealt with urgently. Xiao! After Barakai followed closely behind and rushed out of the Dongshu shuttle, Yi Xian suddenly waved his hand with a gloomy expression and immediately kept it into his body. Then, after pondering for a moment, he immediately asked the devouring system in his body about the black weeping soul horn. Unfortunately, the final result disappointed him greatly. The black weeping soul horn had already gone back and forth between the black hole and the undying world in Yizhuan's body, but the devouring system still knew nothing about it. What was more serious was that whether it was the devouring system or Yi Xian himself, they could no longer sense the whereabouts of the black horn. That thing was clearly in Yi Xian's body, but now, it seemed to have completely disappeared. No matter how hard Yi Xian tried, he could not find the whereabouts of the other party. Such a strange situation was simply unacceptable to Yi Xian, and he was so angry that he almost went berserk on the spot. After all, after refining the undying world, it had long been connected to his bloodline and could no longer be distinguished. But this black weeping soul horn ignored all of this unceremoniously. It could enter and leave as it pleased, but the key was that the other party was clearly in his body, and no matter how hard Yi Xian tried, he could not find a trace of it. It was simply too embarrassing. Chapter 2890. Consciousness Crystal and Essence Crystal. After struggling for a while, Yi Xian gradually calmed down, and his fluctuating emotions also calmed down. With the terrifying strength of the black weeping soul giant horn, if it really wanted to harm him, it would be useless to worry about it. He would not be able to resist at all. Since that was the case, it was better to put this matter to the back of his mind first and slowly think of a way to solve it later. At least from the current situation, the other party did not seem to have shown any ill intentions towards him. And the reason why this black horn refused to leave the undying world in his body was probably because of some other reasons. After thinking about it carefully, he might be able to find the crux of the problem and solve this matter. Thinking of this, Yi Xian's heart immediately calmed down. He finally threw this matter to the back of his mind for the time being. After calming down, He turned his head and glanced at the void army gathered in the black hole in the distance. At the same time, his figure also quickly flew over. Although the Void Ladybird Empress was dead, at the front of this army of millions of soldiers, there were still more than 10,000 giant soldier commanders. Among them, there were even 3 that were as large as 30 feet. Although they could not be compared to the Void Ladybird Empress that was nearly 20 meters in diameter, in Yi Xian's eyes, these 3 giant soldier commanders were still quite tempting. Without the Void Ladybird Empress, he could only choose the next best thing. It would not be bad to keep these 3 giant soldier commanders by his side. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian, who was once again filled with anticipation, quickly arrived in front of the army of 1,000,000 soldiers under the escort of Barakai. What surprised him was that all the soldiers in the army of millions, without exception, trembled when they saw him at this moment. It was exactly the same as when the black weeping soul giant horn hovered in the black hole above them. This was clearly a sign of great fear. Yi Xian pondered for a moment and quickly came to a realization. It was obvious that the Void soldiers were not afraid of him, but the black weeping soul horn that had killed the Void Ladybird Empress in an instant. These Void soldier ladles had all witnessed the scene of the giant black horn rushing out of their bodies. Furthermore, after the black horn killed the Void Ladybird Empress, it had also rushed into their bodies. This scene was also witnessed by all the Void soldier ladles. Under such circumstances, even he himself might not believe that the giant black horn had nothing to do with Yi Xian, let alone these Void soldier ladles. The reason why these Void soldiers immediately revealed such a fearful reaction when Yi Xian approached was because of this. To put it bluntly, it was just one sentence. In the eyes of these Void soldiers, the current Yi Xian was like a fox borrowing the tiger's might. Regardless of whether he had the intention or not, the effect was definitely not fake. After realizing all this, Yi Xian immediately shook his head and laughed bitterly. He didn't think too much about it and immediately forced the profound aura of the Void Essence Crystal out of his body with all his might. This aura was profound and invisible, and Yi Xian had never come into contact with it before. Obviously, it was unique to the Void Essence, and it was absolutely impossible to fake. In this regard, no one could deceive the Void soldier ladles. They were originally subsidiary products of the Void Essence, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they came from the same source. It was precisely because of this that the Void soldier ladle's acute perception of this aura was beyond doubt. Previously, Yi Xian was too far away. In addition, the amount of profound aura emitted by the Void Essence Crystal in his mind wasn't very large. This was why even a supreme expert like the Void Ladybird Emperor was unable to sense the aura within his body. And now, Yi Xian was standing right in front of this army of 1,000,000 Void soldiers, and he was fully urging the profound aura in his sea of consciousness to spread out from his body. Under such circumstances, the Void soldier ladles, who were the most sensitive to this aura, sensed it almost immediately. In a short period of time, all the Void soldier ladles in the army of 1,000,000 looked up at Yi Xian in unison. At first, their eyes were filled with confusion, but gradually, as they acknowledged this aura, the eyes of all the Void soldier ladles began to burn rapidly, and even the slight trembling of their bodies disappeared completely without them noticing. Obviously, they had acknowledged Yi Xian and regarded him as an existence similar to the Void Essence Crystal. This acknowledgement made all the Void soldier ladles regard Yi Xian as the closest and most dependable existence. The extreme fear in their hearts naturally disappeared quietly. Ding! Mental crystal fluctuations have been detected. Accept. Just as Yi Xian was relieved to see the changes in the Void soldier ladles, the notification from the devouring system suddenly rang in his mind. Mental crystal fluctuations? Could it be from the Void soldier ladles in front of him? Yi Xian was immediately stunned. Guesses flashed through his mind, and after pondering for a moment, he immediately ordered the system to accept immediately. Immediately after that, Yi Xian felt a faint tremor in his sea of consciousness. It seemed to be from the Void Essence Crystal that was suspended in the sea of consciousness, separated from his spirit source core. The whole process did not last long. It only took a dozen seconds or so before the slight trembling from the sea of consciousness in his brain completely disappeared. Most likely, the so-called consciousness crystal's waves had all been received. Just as this thought surfaced in his mind, Yi Xian discovered that some information had suddenly appeared in his mind. After being stunned for a moment, he immediately came to a realization. Obviously, this should be the fluctuation of the consciousness crystal that the Void Essence Crystal in his sea of consciousness had received. The Void Essence Crystal and the Void Soldier Ladles originally came from the same source. Only the Void Essence Crystal could receive and analyze the mental crystal fluctuations from the Void Soldier ladles. The information that was analyzed by the Void Essence Crystal was directly imprinted into Yi Xian's mind through the devouring system. He only needed to think about it to understand everything in an instant. In just a few short seconds, Yi Xian had completely comprehended the information from the consciousness crystals that were transmitted through the devouring system. What surprised him was that there were actually 3 portions of the mental crystal fluctuations that he received. They were transmitted by the 3 giant ladle commanders that were about 10 meters in diameter. In the entire Void Soldier Ladle clan, only these 3 8-star Ladle Kings and the 9-star Ladle Queen that had already fallen had a small mental crystal condensed in their bodies. Therefore, they had the ability to activate the mental crystal to form a special fluctuation and communicate with the Void Essence. It was worth mentioning that there was actually a similar mental crystal in the Void Essence's body, but its level was different. Therefore, it was called the Marrow Crystal. Chapter 2891. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation Imprinting Space Coordinates. There were over 10 million Void Soldier ladles, but only the 9-star Ladle Emperor and the 3 8-star ladles had condensed consciousness crystals in their bodies. This was enough to show the importance of the consciousness crystals in their bodies. The essence crystal that the Void Origin Marrow gave to the devouring system had the same nature as the consciousness crystals in the 9-star Ladle Emperor and the 3 8-star ladles. However, its grade was higher, so it was definitely more precious and important. Yi Xian did not know about this before, but now that he knew, he suddenly realized that this was clearly the Void Origin Marrow's funeral arrangements. After all, it would eventually completely fuse with Yi Xian's undying world, so it would not be useful to keep this Void Origin Marrow crystal. Giving it to Yi Xian probably meant that it was entrusting him to him. Yi Xian did not reject this. There were over 10 million Void Soldier ladles, and the 1 million Void Soldier ladles in front of him were merely the elites that followed the 9-star Ladle Emperor. There were even more Void Soldier ladles roaming around in various regions of the vast black hole star domain. This was simply a dream army with terrifying combat power. Yi Xian could not wait to see it, so how could he reject accepting it? Through the information that was transmitted to his mind, Yi Xian now had a good understanding of the Void Soldier ladles. Apart from the number of Void Soldier ladles in the tens of millions, he also included the strength and grade of the 1 million Void Soldier ladles in front of him. The Void Soldier ladles were different from human powerhouses and demons. Even when compared to the various strange races in the universe, they were still considered the most unique type of existence. After all, the Void Soldier ladle's entire body was formed from crystals. Not only did they not have divine sense, spiritual power, or even brainwave, they could not be considered as pure existences. Because of this, although the Void Soldier ladles had different levels of strength, they could not be measured and classified by the cultivation realms in the universe. Because of this, even though Yi Xian was able to distinguish which soldiers were stronger and which were weaker, he was completely unable to determine their true combat strength. What exactly was their true combat strength like? Previously, Ba Kai had only been guessing about the Void Ladybird Emperor's cultivation. Because of this, he was unable to clearly discern the Ladybird Emperor's true strength. He only knew that it was definitely very strong, and that was all. However, Yi Xian had already understood all of this through the 3 pieces of information in his mind. According to the devouring system's analysis, the Void Ladybird Empress's overall combat strength should be equivalent to a starry sky expert who had surpassed the Origin Realm, which was the 10th realm. As for what this realm was, Yi Xian had never come into contact with it, so the devouring system did not know either. In the entire tribe, the other 3 8-star king ladles had condensed consciousness crystals in their bodies. Their overall combat strength was equivalent to the 9th realm of the starry sky expert, the Origin Realm. Behind these 3 8-star king ladles were tens of thousands of 7-star and 6-star king ladles. Their overall combat strength was equivalent to the 8th realm of the starry sky expert, the black hole realm, and the 7th realm, the galaxy realm. After that, there were over 1 million ordinary soldiers. Their overall combat strength varied, but they were basically all at the 4th great realm, the planet realm or above. After all, this army of 1 million was made up of the elites of the tribe stationed around the Void Ladle Emperor's lair. In terms of overall combat strength, it was naturally impossible for them to be too weak. 3 8-star king ladles with Origin Realm strength. More than 10,000 7-star and 6-star king ladles with Black Hole Realm and Galaxy Realm strength. More than 1 million elite soldiers whose strength was at the 4th realm of the planet realm and above. This data was too shocking. Yi Xian's mind was immediately shaken. Immediately after, a wave of excitement surged into his heart, causing him to instantly feel as if he'd hit the jackpot and been smashed into his mouth by a meat pie that had fallen from the sky. Not to mention the other existences of the Void Ladybird tribe that were scattered all over the black hole starfield. Just this million-strong army in front of him would be able to go anywhere in the universe if he could bring them all with him. Although this was a little exaggerated, there was no doubt about the terrifying combat strength of this million-strong army in front of him. Unfortunately, this was only a thought in Yi Xian's mind. He couldn't bring this million-strong army with him. After all, they basically represented the most elite strength of the entire drifting soldier tribe. Although there were still nearly 9 million ladybirds wandering around the black hole starfield, they were all at the lowest level of 1-star and 2-star ladybirds. There were also 3-star and 4-star ladybirds, but there weren't many of them. It could be said that once this million-strong army was brought away, the black hole starfield would no longer be the sole territory of the Void Ladybird tribe. There were countless experts and races in the universe, so who knew if some existences would coincidentally set their sights on this black hole starfield. Moreover, Yi Xian was prepared to imprint his first coordinates in this place. After all, it was well hidden enough. In the future, when his system title was upgraded again and he gained the ability to teleport between planes, he could directly teleport to this place if he encountered a life or death crisis. Because it was in the black hole starfield, Yi Xian would obviously have more protection if he was in danger. Therefore, this black hole starfield had to be firmly held in his hands no matter what. Of course, this kind of control was actually achieved through the countless void ladybirds left in the black hole starfield. Therefore, Yi Xian had to leave behind enough elite troops. Only by being strong enough would he be able to ensure that this black hole starfield wouldn't be lost. After pondering for a while, he quickly came to a final decision. Of the million-strong army in front of him, he only needed to bring away 100,000 of them. One of the Origin Realm 8-star ladybirds would be chosen. Half of the Black Hole Realm and Galaxy Realm 7-star and 6-star ladybirds would be taken away, which was 5,000. The remaining 95,000 would be chosen from the nearly 1 million void ladybirds. 100,000 void ladybirds was the limit of a single bastion's capacity. When the time came, all of the Black Wind and Black Mosquito would have to be moved to the same bastion. Apart from those responsible for the operation of the bastion's engine room on the 3rd floor, the rest of the bastion would be empty to accommodate the 100,000 void ladybirds. Otherwise, Yi Xian wouldn't be able to absorb them all into his body. He couldn't just carry them around everywhere, could he? After making his decision, Yi Xian immediately notified the devouring system of his decision, allowing the system to communicate with the Void Essence Crystal in his Sea of Consciousness. Through the Void Essence Crystal, it was finally transmitted to the 3 8-star king ladles in front of him, allowing them to quickly select and confirm these 100,000 elites. Chapter 2892. Going to the Demonic Emperor planet very soon, Yi Xian's decision was successfully conveyed through the devouring system and the Void Essence Crystal in his Sea of Consciousness after 2 transfers. It was indeed a little troublesome, but it couldn't be helped. Previously, Yi Xian had tried to communicate with the Void Essence Crystal, but it didn't respond to him at all. Since Yi Xian couldn't directly communicate with the Void Soldier Ladle, he had no choice but to do this. After arranging all of this, Yi Xian did not even bring along Ba Chai. He indicated for him to stay with the army and wait for him. After all, what he was going to do this time was to imprint his first coordinates in space. This did not seem to be of much use at the moment, but in the future, it would definitely become one of Yi Xian's most important life-saving skills. It was a matter of great importance, so even if it was a demon slave, he did not dare to reveal the exact coordinates. Very soon, he moved alone and quickly flew towards the dark and endless void of the Star Cave starfield. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, half a day had passed. Yi Xian was still moving at top speed, heading towards the deepest end of the black hole region. The space coordinates that he had imprinted were the teleportation destination that he would use to escape at the critical moment of life and death. It was obviously not suitable to be too close to the entrance of this black hole space zone. The deeper he went, the safer it would be. With this thought in mind, Yi Xian ran for nearly 2 days in this unchanging void that was surrounded by endless darkness from beginning to end. Only when he was certain that even if he wasn't at the end of this black hole galaxy, it definitely wasn't too far away did he finally stop. It was too boring. Even though the end was not far away, Yi Xian was not willing to continue. Usually, when he was traveling alone in the boundless void, there would at least be countless large and small stars appearing from time to time. However, in this black hole space there was nothing. After being bored for so long, even if he just wanted to change his field of vision and see different sceneries, it would only be wishful thinking. In less than 2 days, Yi Xian felt like 2 whole months had passed. To be safe, Yi Xian circled around the void once again. After confirming that there was nothing out of the ordinary, not even a single void soldier ladle, he landed and communicated with the devouring system in his body to understand the specific steps and method of imprinting the space coordinates. In less than half an hour, Yi Xian was fully aware of all of this. Although the location he chose in this black hole void was to be the destination of the starry sky teleportation in the future, since it was the starry sky coordinates, all the other conditions and arrangements needed for the teleportation, such as the teleportation platform, restriction formation, and the like, were naturally unnecessary. After all, it was the exclusive ability of the starry sky title that came with the devouring system. It would be unreasonable if it was not more advanced. The coordinates that he had imprinted were actually a primordial spirit imprint. Once it was imprinted, then Yi Xian's primordial spirit imprint would fuse with the space he was currently in. It would be fixed and exist here for eternity. Moreover, there was no trace of it, nor was there the slightest trace of its aura. This was because it had already completely fused with a certain point in the space. Only when Yi Xian activated an interstellar teleportation in a distant galaxy would the function of the imprint be instantly revealed. Within the same universe, regardless of the distance, it would form some sort of invisible connection with Yi Xian's imprint in the blink of an eye. Then, like a beacon, it would guide his interstellar teleportation to this place. After understanding all of this, Yi Xian was completely relieved. Previously, he was worried that if the imprinting of the coordinates took too long, it would be difficult to guarantee that it would not be discovered by some coincidental beings. But now, it seemed that this worry was completely unnecessary. The soul imprint had completely fused with the void. Even if he deliberately searched for it, it was obvious that there would not be any results. With his mind at ease, Yi Xian immediately ordered the devouring system to start imprinting the coordinates of the star coordinates. Soon, the system's prompt sounded in his mind, guiding Yi Xian step by step to start the imprinting of the coordinates. The whole process was basically not too complicated. It was just refining a strand of the primordial spirit that had been processed by various means into a special brand. Then, this primordial spirit brand would be shot out of the body in an extremely mysterious and complicated way, connecting it with the void, fitting it, and finally completely fusing with it in the end. However, these few words sounded simple, but in the actual process, it was obviously not so. First of all, the pain of forcibly separating a small strand of one's own soul was already difficult to describe with words. Then, after separating this strand of soul, Yi Xian could not immediately adjust his breathing to recover and repair his mind. He had to forcefully endure the various discomforts of the injured soul, force himself to be alert, and use different and complicated methods again and again to continuously condense this strand of soul. This process took more than half a day. Afterwards, Yi Xian also had to focus on the entire process as he fused the successfully condensed primordial spirit imprint into the space before him. From connecting the void to fusing the primordial spirit imprint with the primordial spirit imprint, he didn't dare to relax in the slightest from the beginning to the end. He was even a little on edge. After all, if the fusion failed, everything would have to start all over again. In that case, experiencing the pain of the soul being separated again was not a big deal. The key was that 2 days had passed. If this continued, Yi Xian would not be able to make it in time for the Black Mosquito Tribe's Holy Sun trial on the Devil Emperor planet. This was something that Yi Xian could not miss no matter what. Fortunately, the final result was more daunting than dangerous. Just once, Yi Xian's first star coordinates successfully and perfectly fused into the chosen black hole void. After all this was done, the entire void was completely different from before. Even Yi Xian himself could not feel the presence of that strand of soul imprint. This result made him click his tongue in wonder, and the last strand of worry in his heart finally dissipated completely. After that, Yi Xian immediately left the void. He rushed towards the path he came from at an extremely fast speed for half a day before waving his hand and summoning the Dongshu shuttle within his body. After all, he had spent a full day and a half on the way here. If this continued, he would waste another day on the way back. But if he used the Dongshu shuttle to rush back at full speed, he would be able to reach the place where he had parted with Ba Chai in half a day. At that time, he would only need to spend a little more time to arrange the 100,000 void soldiers into a space fortress. Then, Yi Xian could leave this black hole void and rush to the Devil Emperor planet at full speed. Chapter 2893. Translator. Henyi Translations Editor. Henyi Translations Waliching was flushed with success. The ferocious mosquito, which had been carrying the 10 candidates to the demonic emperor planet for the Black Mosquito tribe's Holy Sun trial, had departed from the Black Mosquito domain 10 days in advance. By the time they had passed by the black hole in the middle section of their journey, they had already spent 3 full days on the journey. It was also at this time that the ferocious mosquito had been destroyed. Less than half of the 10,000 demonkin experts inside the bastion had perished, while the rest had entered a stellar-level warship that Zhuangguo had prepared beforehand. The Black Mosquito tribe's Grand Commander, Zhuafeng Tai, had paid a hefty price to obtain this warship from outside the demonkin domain. Not only could it perform long-distance space jumps like the Bastion, but its interior also utilized the Tianji clan's perfect space folding technology. Therefore, although the exterior of the warship was the same as an ordinary stellar-level warship, with a length of only 3,000 meters, the interior space was very large. It could definitely accommodate more than 10,000 demonkin experts. That day, this special stellar-level warship called the Fengting had successfully performed a long-distance space jump at the same time as the ferocious mosquito bastion had completely disintegrated. Zhuangguo and Liching, uncle and niece, had laughed and celebrated in private. Although they had lost thousands of demonkin, neither the uncle nor Zhuafeng Tai, the Grand Commander of the Black Mosquito tribe, actually cared about this at all. It was the ferocious mosquito bastion and some of its resources that they felt rather regretful about. However, in Zhuafeng Tai's view, this was not a problem. After all, on the surface, the ferocious mosquito bastion had been destroyed by a normal accident. Under such circumstances, he could very well request for another bastion to be sent over as a replacement. In this way, the father and son had actually not suffered any losses. On the contrary, they had gotten rid of Zhang Wuji, a super freak with a terrifying level 5 spirit source core at the first level of the meteor realm. No matter how one looked at it, this was a huge gain. After all, it was obvious that the father and son duo had fallen out with Zhang Wuji. If they did not get rid of him as soon as possible, it would be the end of the world for the father and son once the young man grew up with his abnormal spiritual power and innate talent. Moreover, if they did not get rid of this person, with his terrifying psychic talent, everyone else from the Black Mosquito tribe who had gone to the Holy Sun trial, including Liching, who had originally thought that he was a scholar prince, without exception, all without exceptions Liching. The Black Mosquito tribe's new saint was this person. And now, with the fall of Zhang Wuji, the title of Holy Sun had undoubtedly returned to Liching's hands. This was something he was extremely certain of, without the slightest bit of suspense. Although the Black Mosquito tribe's bastion had departed 10 days earlier, before the ferocious mosquito had been destroyed, half of the journey behind them had already taken 3 days. In other words, the Rising Tang had a full 7 days to cover the other half of the journey. Although its ability to jump through space was not comparable to that of a real bastion, it was definitely not inferior by more than half. According to Zhuangguo's estimation, the ferocious mosquito bastion should have only needed 3 days to cover the distance, but with the Rising Tang, they would need at most 4 days to cover the distance. Based on this calculation, they clearly had 3 days to spare. Even so, Zhuangguo did not dare to relax in the slightest. He spent most of his time in the Rising Tang's control room, overseeing and supervising. After all, this trial was related to the Black Mosquito tribe's Holy Sun's position. Whether Zhuafeng Tai's faction could succeed or not, it was no longer the same as before. It was always under the control of the High Priest, Greybone Lei. Therefore, Zhuangguo did not dare to take it lightly. As for Liching, since his greatest enemy Zhang Wuji had been schemed against and died in the area of the black hole, he was a different person. He was very proud of his success. During the next few days of the voyage, Liching had nothing to do, so he mingled with the other 7 sage-to-be. Obviously, these 7 guys knew that they were only here to accompany the crown prince in his studies, so they had already accepted it. Therefore, their words and actions were almost flattering. After 4 days, Liching, who was getting more and more complacent, was almost sent to heaven. On the evening of the 4th day, Zhuangguo, who had been overseeing the Rising Tang's control room, personally came to greet them, saying that they would arrive at the Demon Emperor planet the next morning. He asked them to rest well so that they would not be impolite tomorrow. At this time, Liching and the other 7 suddenly realized that they did not have to meet again this time. They all returned to their own villas and caves to properly prepare. In fact, even Liching, as the young master of the Black Mosquito tribe, was inexplicably nervous when he realized that they would arrive at the Demon Emperor planet the next morning. Even he had never been to the Demon Emperor planet. It was not that he did not have the opportunity. After all, among the 10 tribes of the Demon Tribe, each tribe had a space fortress. Although it was not used often, it was basically necessary to go to the Demon Emperor planet at least once a year. As long as Zhuo Liqing was willing, as the young master of the tribe, he could go with him. In fact, there was a reason why he had never been there before. To put it bluntly, he was afraid of trouble. The Demon Emperor planet was the main planet of the Demon Tribe. In addition to the Supreme Demon Emperor, there was also the High Priest. And there was more than one. One of them happened to be from the Black Mosquito Tribe. His name was Wen Xing, and he was the former High Priest of the Black Mosquito Tribe. At that time, the current High Priest, Huegu, was only the holy son of the tribe. Because of this relationship, it was not a big deal to visit the other experts of the Black Mosquito Tribe, but Zhuo Liqing was the young master of the tribe. If he came to the Demon Emperor planet and did not pay a special visit, it would be a great breach of etiquette. It was even possible that he would be misunderstood by High Priest Wen Xing. In case he had a grudge against the Zhuo family of the Black Mosquito Tribe, it would be a big joke. Because of this, Zhuo Fengtai did not allow Zhuo Liqing to go to the Demon Emperor planet at will. He was afraid that Zhuo Liqing would accidentally offend Wen Xing, and he would not even know it. Coincidentally, Wen Xing was extremely disgusted by this kind of boring thing, so his interest in going to the Demon Emperor planet to broaden his horizons gradually faded. In the blink of an eye, many years had passed. At this moment, the reason why Zhuo Liqing felt slightly nervous was because of High Priest Wen Xing. Although he had never seen this person before, it was rumored that his strength was quite terrifying. He had already broken through the origin stage and entered the 10th great stage, the Heavenly Passage stage. In addition, his spirit source core had reached a terrifying level 6, which was second only to the Demon Emperor, who had a level 7 source core. Chapter 2894. Destination: Demonic Emperor planet. After successfully integrating his first set of coordinates into a corner of the Black Hole Galaxy, Yi Xian summoned his Dongshu shuttle and entered it. Immediately, he pushed the shuttle to its limits and returned to where he came from at top speed. As soon as the matter in front of him was done, the anxiety in his heart that he had been suppressing became more and more uncontrollable. For Yi Xian, this opportunity to become the Black Mosquito Tribe's chosen was not something he could miss no matter what. After all, this was his only chance to enter the forbidden land of the demonic saint. If he missed this opportunity, he would not be able to obtain the multi-pupil crystal, and he would not be able to rapidly develop the immortal rank superbrain fragment that served as the intelligence center of his interstellar communicator. If that was really the case, then Yi Xian would probably be extremely depressed. It was an immortal rank superbrain fragment that should have possessed a more powerful interstellar communicator, but because of its slow growth, it could only display the abilities of an ordinary superbrain. It was no different from holding a dragon slayer stallion in his hand, but could only chop firewood in the backyard every day. It would be strange if he was not depressed. 2.5 days had passed since the destruction of Ferocious Mosquito. Before that, the ship had already spent 3 days on the first half of the journey. For Yi Xian, even if he were to leave immediately, he would only have 4.5 days left. If he were to run into some other small accident along the way, he would be even more pressed for time. Even if the Black Mosquito or Black Wind were to hurry along, there was no guarantee that they would arrive on time. Because of this, Yi Xian stepped out of the Dongshu shuttle after hurrying back. With a wave of his hand, he put it back into the undying world within his body. After all, it was not appropriate for Hao Fangfang to know what was to come. In front of them, the army of 1,000,000 soldiers had long since been divided into 2 parts. The smaller part was the 100,000 soldiers that Yi Xian had requested to take away. At the very front was an 8-star king ladle that was around 10 meters in diameter. Its overall combat strength was equivalent to an origin stage expert, and it was most likely an existence that was much stronger than Xue Ben. After all, the latter was only at the first level of the origin realm. After retracting his gaze, Yi Xian immediately took out the Black Mosquito and Black Wind bastions from his undying world. At the same time, he used his psychic energy to connect with the 2 Bastion Central AI superbrains and used them to relay his orders to Buck and the other high-ranking members of the Demon Slavs. It didn't take long for all of the demons to leave the Black Wind and return to the Black Mosquito. However, none of the demons on the 3rd floor moved. After all, they needed someone to take care of the engine and warehouse areas. As for the fourth floor above, the demonkin servants and guards were all there, including the demonkin think tank who was in charge of the central control room of the fourth floor. Apart from that, the lower two levels were basically empty. The second level of the demonic dwellings was empty without a single demonic dweller expert. It was enough to house tens of thousands of void soldiers. As for the other half, they were naturally placed in the first level of the myriad hell. Although there were still thousands of Federation powerhouses there, they would probably be stunned to see so many strange insects move in and live with them. But this wasn't something Yi Xian had time to think about. The cages were closed anyway, and the void soldiers couldn't get in. As long as they weren't eaten like meat, it was fine. Soon, all of the demons on the Black Wind Bastion had left. Yi Xian immediately used his devouring system to contact the void marrow crystal in his knowledge. Once the order was given, the army of 100,000 void soldiers soared into the air like a black wave. One after another, they disappeared into the main passage of the Black Wind's light barrier. At this point, all of the forces that Yi Xian had gathered from the front and back had been temporarily arranged. The lower two levels of the Black Wind had 100,000 void soldiers, while the lower level of the Black Mosquito, the Myriad Hell, had 10 million mosquito beasts. The reason so many mosquito beasts could be accommodated was because the mosquito beasts weren't that big. Moreover, they were used to building their nests in the air. The Myriad Hell's large space was used to the fullest. As for the upper three levels of the Black Mosquito, the top level was still the same. Li Mosquito, Naboshan, Ba Chai, and the other confidants had been given the authority to activate the portal to the top level. Du Wenshuan and Du Wenshuan were the same. In the future, Yi Xian's confidants would be settled in the third and fourth levels of the Black Mosquito. The second level below was occupied by 5,000-man brigades of fiend slaves. A total of 5,000 fiend slaves were stationed there. 4 of the 1,000-man brigades of fiend slaves had just been transferred from the Black Wind. Only one of them was the original 1,000-man brigade of fiend slaves from the Black Mosquito. Its chilly arch was Cong Qingyu. As for the other brigade of fiend slaves from the Black Mosquito, they were still led by Gue Hai Yi Dao in the greatly expanded Dongshu shuttle. It was the same for the wretched Mosquito Slayer. After arranging the two bastions, Yi Xian's last consideration was his Dongshu shuttle. Right now, he had too much power in his hands, but it was basically not something that could be easily exposed. For example, the tens of thousands of mosquito beasts at the bottom of the Black Mosquito ship. Although the aura they released together was definitely astonishing, it also instantly pushed Yi Xian to the cusp of the storm. Besides, it was inconvenient to take out the bastions at any time. Lu Wenshuan had added the perfect space folding technology to his Dongshu shuttle. Its internal space had expanded by 100 times and was even divided into 3 levels. Hao Fengfeng and Yi Xian were usually in the main control room on the top level. The former obviously did not have the authority to enter the 2 levels below. Therefore, he was completely unaware that the 1,000-man brigade of fiend slaves led by Gue Hai Yi Dao and the wretched Mosquito Slayer were on the second level in the middle. In addition, the largest space had a central plaza. The bottom level was basically empty. After some hesitation, Yi Xian decided to divide the first level into 3 areas. The center would be the plaza, and the 2 sides would be occupied by 1,000 mosquito beasts and 1,000 soldier ladles. After making the decision, Yi Xian quickly selected the mosquito beasts and soldier ladles. There were 200 of them, from the 3rd realm, planet level to the 8th realm, black hole level. In this way, Yi Xian would be able to use the forces of different realms at any time under different circumstances. Yi Xian then took out the Dongshu shuttle again. Of course, to prevent Hao Fengfeng from peeking at him from the top level, Yi Xian directly turned off some functions. Then, he let the 1,000 mosquito beasts and soldier ladles all enter the first level below. After everything was settled, Yi Xian immediately closed the black light membrane between the 2 bastions and put them away into his undying world with a wave of his hand. Chapter 2895. Translator, Henyi Translations Editor, Henyi Translations 1 Emperor, 2 guards. Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle had successfully completed the 6th fusion with the Dongshu shuttle, which had a perfect internal folding space created by Old Man Du Now. Like his Devil Blood Star tier sword and indestructible glass armor, it had become an epic-class Starry Sky treasure ship. Not to mention its functions. In addition to the internal folding space and the upgraded version of the Star Destroyer cannon, there were several types of eternal formations engraved on the hull of the ship. Acceleration formation, defense formation, concealment formation, transmission formation, and so on. It was simply dazzling. It could be said that this epic-class small private warship, after being meticulously built by Yi Xian more than 6 times, was now absolutely a rare treasure in the outside world. Oh right, it had also been integrated with a small private warship called the Black Hole Warship, so it had the same sturdy hull as a stellar-level large warship, which could withstand the tearing force of the void produced by the wormhole jump. But even so, being able to withstand the crushing force of the wormhole jump did not mean that it had the ability to open the wormhole jump at any time. The Dongshu shuttle had the transmission formation, which could teleport both the passengers and the ship away, but this kind of teleportation and wormhole jump were two completely different concepts. Simply put, no matter how far the distance of teleportation was, it was just that. But wormhole jump was different. Generally, it could directly cross the distance of a galaxy, which was far beyond the reach of a simple transmission. In fact, even a stellar-level large warship with a length of 3,000 meters did not have the ability to autonomously connect wormholes and open the wormhole jump at any time and anywhere. For a stellar-level warship of this level, if it wanted to perform a long-distance wormhole jump, it had to first rush to a natural wormhole that had long been discovered, and enter it before it could open the wormhole jump. Zhua Hongwu's warship was an exception. In this aspect, it was clearly specially added. Just like Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle, it had various abilities that other small private warships of the same type did not have. However, the fact that the Dongshu shuttle could not connect to space wormholes was obviously a shortcoming. Because of this, Yi Xian had no choice but to take the risk and use the Black Wind. Otherwise, with the short-distance space transmission of the Dongshu shuttle, it would be too late by the time he arrived at the demonic Emperor planet. After returning to the Void Hole shuttle and rushing out of the Black Hole of Life, Yi Xian continued to travel for more than 2 hours before finally stopping in a desolate void. This time, only he and Ba Chai walked out of the Void Hole shuttle. As for Hao Fong, Yi Xian didn't dare to let him know about the Black Wind Battlestar. However, considering that he was the only one left on the top floor of the Void shuttle, and that it was unlikely that he would be able to take out the Void shuttle from the undying world within his body in the next few days, before Yi Xian and Ba Chai left, he specially went to the second floor below and brought the wretched mosquito butcher over. He didn't want to lock up a nagging fellow like Hao Fong alone for the next few days, so that she wouldn't go crazy from holding it in. The reason he personally went down to the middle floor was because Yi Xian didn't give the wretched mosquito slayer access to the different floors of the Dongshu shuttle. Ever since Yi Xian had taken him in as his demon slave, he had improved a lot compared to before. However, from time to time, he would still display some extremely unreliable behavior. This was something that Yi Xian could only attribute to the fact that it was hard to change one's nature. But from then on, Yi Xian had to keep an eye out for this wretch. Who knew what kind of trouble he would stir up in the future? With a wave of his hand, he stored the Dongshu shuttle in his undying world. Yi Xian immediately summoned the Black Wind and activated its concealment formation. This was to avoid being seen on the way to the demonic Emperor planet. After all, this was one of the 10 great demonic tribe scout fortresses. There were probably quite a few demonic experts who recognized it. After that, Yi Xian and Barakai entered the Black Wind and immediately gave the order to travel at full speed. At the same time, they activated the wormhole connection mode. Once they successfully connected to a stable wormhole, they would immediately jump through it. In addition, Yi Xian specifically reminded them to stop as soon as they got close to the demonic Emperor planet. They couldn't enter rashly, so as to avoid being exposed. After explaining all this, Yi Xian didn't need to ask about the itinerary. If anything unexpected happened, the demonic slaves would come and report. After all, although the demonic experts on the Black Wind had been subdued by Yi Xian and became his slaves, their knowledge of the demonic Emperor planet hadn't been erased. It was impossible that the Black Wind hadn't been to the demonic Emperor planet before, so the rest of the journey was as easy as a walk in the park for them. Yi Xian's questions were unnecessary. Taking advantage of the time, he directly sat down on the leather sofa in the luxurious hall in the core area of the top floor of the Black Wind. Then, through the personal space communication system in his body, he directly connected to the internal space network of the Black Wind and issued a conditional search to retrieve all the information about the Devil Emperor planet for research. The Black Wind's superbrain had some of this information. After all, this was an important military base under the protection of the 10 scouts of the Demonkin tribes. It had to be stored in the Black Wind's database for easy access. Through the information in the Black Wind's database, Yi Xian quickly gained a general understanding of the demonic Emperor planet. The demonic Emperor planet was located at the center of the Demonkin galaxy. Although it was commonly referred to as the demonic Emperor planet, it wasn't actually a single planet. Instead, It was composed of a main planet and two smaller satellites that orbited the main planet. These two smaller satellites were called Demon Satellite 1 and Demon Satellite 2. They were only small in comparison to the Demon Imperial Star. In fact, Demon Satellite 1 and Demon Satellite 2 were about the same size as the main stars of the top 10 demon tribes. For example, the main star of the Star Mosquito tribe was the Black Mosquito Star. The main star, the Demon Emperor Star, which these two subsidiary satellites revolved around, was a rather rare giant star. The diameter of the star was several times the size of Demon Satellite 1 and Demon Satellite 2. The surface area of the star was even wider, so it was easy to imagine how vast it was. To make an analogy, 3 stars placed together were basically the difference between 2 apples and a watermelon. There were also many demon dwellers residing on the 2 satellites, but the Demon Emperor Star had even more demon dwellers. Each of the 10 demon tribes had 10 demon stars. Although each demon star only had about 10,000 scouts, if the ordinary demon civilians were included, the total population of each demon star was in the hundreds of thousands. The smallest one was 30, and the largest one was 50. In other words, the total population of a demonkin tribe was between 3 and 5 million. The total population of the 10 tribes was between 30 and 50 million. The total population of the demonic emperor planet's 1 main planet and 2 satellites was also over 30 million. In other words, nearly half of the entire Devil Dweller race lived on these 3 central stars. Zeta. Chapter 2896. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The secrets of the source Koreas for the environment. The demonic emperor planet had 1 emperor, 2 satellite, and 3 other planets. All of them were of the best quality with pleasant scenery and a comfortable climate. The entire demonic emperor planet was located in the central demonic emperor planet, which was surrounded by 2 satellites. 2/3 of the demonic emperor planet was covered by land and only 1/3 by sea. The demonic emperor city, the core of the demonic emperor planet, was located in a vast plain in the central region of the entire continent. The demonic emperor city was not just a single city. It was also divided into 2 major regions. The central inner city was the Imperial City region, and the wider area surrounding the Imperial City region was the outer city region. Like the other demonic emperor planets, the demonic emperor planet did not have the astral defense array that was commonly found in the various administrative planets of the Third World. In other words, the atmosphere of these 3 planets could be entered at will. No one would stop you, whether you directly traversed the void and landed on the inner part of the planet or drove a warship. However, in the demonic emperor city, one could not fly at will, let alone take out a warship. Once such a situation occurred, the demonic emperor guards in the city would immediately take action. This flight restriction was not only applied to the sky above the Imperial City region, but also to the wider sky above the outer city. Within 100 miles of the outer city, one could only fly at low altitudes. Warships and the like were not allowed to be used either. As for the structure of power, it was similar to the feudal monarchies of the ancient human race. The demonic emperor was supreme, and there were civil and military officials under him. The commanders of the 10 major tribes were equivalent to the kings of different territories. Unlike the feudal monarchies of the ancient human race, the demonic emperor was not only revered, but his personal strength was also the strongest on the demonic emperor planet and even among the entire demonic emperor race. It was said that in the entire demonic emperor planet, there were at least 5 supreme masters who had reached the Grotto Heaven realm, the 10th stage of the demonic emperor planet. As for the 9th stage, the origin stage, which was below the Grotto Heaven realm, there were obviously more of them. Among the less than 10 supreme beings at the Grotto Heaven realm, the demonic emperor's cultivation base was publicly recognized as the strongest. However, no one knew exactly what level he was at the Grotto Heaven realm. Nevertheless, everyone knew the level of the demonic emperor's mind. The demon emperor's mind source core had already undergone 6 transformations and evolutions, so it had already reached the 7th level. This was a unique existence in the entire demonic race. In fact, the level of the spirit origin core was slightly inferior to the demon emperor's. A demon cultivator who had reached the 6th level was definitely a rarity in the entire demon emperor. Even if all the level 6 origin cores on the 1 emperor, 2 guards, and 3 stars of the demon cultivator star region were added together, they still wouldn't be able to make up the number of people on both hands. Yi Xian only knew of 2 people from the Black Winds database. However, he had heard the Mad Mosquito Emperor of the Mosquito Beast planet mention that on the Demonic Emperor planet, there were 3 Demonic Emperor royals with level 6 spirit cores, who were even more senior than the current Demonic Emperor. According to what Yi Xian had learned from the Black Wind's database, one of them was the great commander of the demonic emperor's guards, who had a supreme grotto heaven realm cultivation base, Chanas. The other person was Wen Xing, who had left the Black Mosquito tribe and entered the demonic emperor planet because he had been recognized by the demonic emperor. He had been promoted from the Black Mosquito tribe's high priest to the imperial capital's high priest. Yi Xian had heard of the fact that the latter's spirit core was at the 6th level. Wen Xing was also a supreme powerhouse with a grotto heaven realm cultivation base. Wen Xing and Chanas were the two most powerful existences in the demonic emperor star region. In the entire demonic emperor star region, they were second only to the demonic emperor. Their high status and great authority were second to none in the entire demonic emperor race. The only difference was that the great commander of the demonic emperor guards, Chanas, was in charge of the security of the entire demonic emperor city and the surrounding areas. High Priest Wen Xing represented the demonic emperor in managing the demonic saint ancestral temple, which was also located in the central area of the imperial capital. At the same time, High Priest Wen Xing was also in charge of the 10 great tribes' holy test. As for the entrance to the demonic saint forbidden land, it was also in the imperial capital and not far from the demonic saint ancestral temple. However, the people in charge of guarding this place were all descendants of the demonic emperor's bloodline. This showed how important the demonic saint forbidden land was to the demonic emperor's bloodline. It was said that the demonic emperor, who had single-handedly expanded the entire demonic race, had obtained an opportunity from the demonic saint forbidden land. The demonic emperor's spirit core was the highest level existence in the history of the demonic race. After 7 transformations and evolutions, it had reached level 8. When he saw this, Yi Xian suddenly thought of the Mad Mosquito Emperor. The Mad Mosquito Emperor had left a spiritual imprint in his Sea of Consciousness that could protect Yi Xian's Sea of Consciousness from being probed by any demonic race powerhouse with a higher level of source core. Although Yi Xian didn't know how to respond to this spiritual imprint, the Mad Mosquito Emperor wouldn't lie to him about this. However, what made Yi Xian a little suspicious was that the Mad Mosquito Emperor had claimed that his source core level was the same as the demonic emperor's, which was level 8. He had even said with a sigh that if one's source core couldn't reach level 9, they would be nothing more than ants. It was as if he didn't take his level 8 source core seriously at all. As he thought about this, Yi Xian unknowingly became distracted and started to speculate about the mysteries of the demonic race's source core. It just so happened that he had finished reading all the information he had obtained from the central database of the Black Wind's superbrain. Yi Xian casually took out a small spatial pagoda that contained a large number of weeping soul beasts from his undying world. Then, he took out a few weeping soul beasts from the pagoda and began to absorb the spirit source energy with ease. Unknowingly, 4 days passed in the blink of an eye. During these 4 days, Yi Xian, who had entered a state of cultivation, was so engrossed in it that he didn't notice the passage of time at all. It wasn't until Ba Chai came in front of him and carefully extended his spiritual power to remind Yi Xian that he abruptly woke up. The weeping soul beasts that had taken out the small spatial tower had also finished absorbing the spirit origin. So he immediately got up and waved his hand to absorb the small black horns scattered all over the ground into his body. Then, he asked Ba Chai about the Black Wind's journey through space. Yi Xian was immediately shocked by this question. Unknowingly, a full 4 days had passed since he had absorbed the weeping soul beasts. No wonder he felt that the small black horns on the ground were densely packed. There were clearly too many of them. Fortunately, although there was a small accident along the way that delayed them quite a bit of time, the Black Wind finally arrived at the demonic Emperor star system after 4 days of space travel. Now, according to Yi Xian's instructions, the Black Wind had stopped at a secluded side of an abandoned dead star. Furthermore, the concealment formation had been activated all along. Although this place wasn't very close to the demonic Emperor star, with the speed of Yi Xian's Dongshu shuttle, they would be able to reach it in less than half a day. Chapter 2897. The Mosquito Slayer was as strange as ever. Time was already running out, so Yi Xian didn't dare to delay any longer. He immediately escaped from the Black Wind Battlestar with Ba Chai and Ba Chai, then raised his hand and stored it back into the undying world within his body. Only then did Yi Xian immediately take out the Dongshu shuttle and enter the cabin with Ba Chai. Originally, Yi Xian wanted to activate the Dongshu shuttle immediately and head for the demonic Emperor planet at top speed. However, as soon as he stepped into the cabin, everything he saw and heard was so shocking that he almost trembled. Even the thought of making the best use of his time was gone. In his line of sight, Hao Fong Fong and the wretched mosquito butcher's actions were clearly filled with a thick sense of strangeness. The wretched mosquito butcher was actually like a lord, spreading his body and leaning on the animal skin sofa. Although Hao Fong Fong was also sitting at the side, his hands were clearly hugging the wretched mosquito butcher's smelly feet at this moment. Furthermore, she had taken off her shoes and socks, and even her pants were rolled up by 2 layers. She was clearly massaging the wretched mosquito slayer's feet with a fawning expression on her face. The latter, on the other hand, was lying on his back with his eyes slightly closed. His face was filled with bliss and satisfaction, and he was even humming softly from his mouth and nose. When the sound entered Yi Xian's ears, it instantly made his hair stand on end. All the hairs on his body stood on end. What made him feel even stranger was that the wretched mosquito slayer in front of him was looking more and more like the wretched mosquito slayer when he had pretended to be subdued by his slave seal. This expression, this demeanor, and that hair-raising sound like an old cat crying out in spring. No one who saw or heard this would ever associate it with the existence of a demon slave. "Master, you've come." At this moment, the wretched mosquito slayer who was squinting his eyes on the sofa coincidentally saw the sudden appearance of Yi Xian and Ba Chai through his slightly squinted eyes. He immediately retracted his pair of smelly feet, and with a sincere smile on his face, he nodded and bowed towards Yi Xian. On the other hand, Hao Fong Fong's expression clearly did not show the slightest bit of awkwardness or distress. It was as if his action of ordering the servant girl to knead the wretched mosquito slayer's smelly feet was completely justified and justified. There must be something wrong here. As this thought flashed through his mind, Yi Xian sized up the wretched mosquito butcher with a suspicious look in his eyes. Then, he asked Ba Chai to take him back to the 2nd level below. As for himself, he immediately activated the Dongshu shuttle, which had activated the concealment formation, and flew toward the Devil Emperor planet at full speed. As for the strangeness between Hao Fong Fong and the wretched mosquito butcher, although Yi Xian's heart was filled with suspicion, it wasn't the time to think about such things right now. After he was done with the urgent matters in front of him, he would have the time to slowly investigate. Yi Xian did not slack at all as he activated the shuttle with all his might. After half a day in front of the Dongshu shuttle, in the void of the galaxy, 1 big, 2 small, and 3 planets with green eyes finally appeared. Obviously, they had finally arrived at the Devil Emperor planet. If there was enough time, Yi Xian would have chosen to stop at a distance, then stepped out of the Dongshu shuttle, put it away, and once again traversed the void with his physical body to enter the Devil Emperor planet. However, there were only 4 hours left before the Black Mosquito Tribe's Holy Sun trial test officially began, and there was still a short distance to the Devil Emperor planet. In addition, after entering the interior of the Devil Emperor planet, due to its unusually large size, the surface of the planet in the atmosphere was especially vast. If he traversed the void with his physical body, he would have to spend a little more than half of the last 4 hours. If there were any other accidents, he was afraid that he would really miss the Black Mosquito Tribe's Holy Sun trial test. Considering this, Yi Xian hesitated for a moment. Finally, he made up his mind and directly activated the Dongshu shuttle, flying toward the Devil Emperor planet at full speed. Soon after, the Dongshu shuttle, which had activated the concealment formation, was like an invisible meteor, rapidly plunging into the atmosphere of the Devil Emperor planet. After a brief period of hazy fog, the view in front of the battleship was instantly reflected in a large expanse of lush greenery. This was clearly the best planet for habitation. Green mountains and rivers filled the eyes, and there was not much difference between this planet and the administrative planet where the human race lived in the 3rd universe. Even the buildings were roughly similar, but the style was quite different. Yi Xian only glanced at it a few times, then withdrew his mind and directly issued an order to the personal star communication system in his body, allowing it to connect to the star network of the Devil Emperor planet. He then launched a conditional search to obtain the geographical information of the Devil Emperor planet, as well as the location of the Holy Demon Forbidden Land, which was used for the Holy Sun trial test, as well as other information. If he was in the territory of the human race in the 3rd universe, facing such an imperial city, which was far from comparable to an ordinary administrative planet, Yi Xian would naturally not be so careless as to directly connect to the star network, considering that the central superbrain of his personal star communication system was still in a fragmented state. But if he was in the Devil domain, then there was nothing to worry about. Although the Devil race had submitted to the Tianji race, they also had technological applications in various aspects, such as battleships, which were basically products based on technological elements, were extremely common in the Devil domain. However, all of the Demon domain's planets in this star field, without exception, did not have the normal star defense system of the 3rd universe's human race. In that case, even if they actually had the starry sky network, Even if the star in front of them was an important place for the entire demon race, Yi Xian didn't need to analyze to be sure that the level of the Starry Sky superbrain used by the Demon Emperor Starry Sky network definitely wasn't that high. Since that was the case, even if his personal star communication system was based on a fragmented piece of the superbrain, Yi Xian believed that the other party would definitely not discover that the communication system had been hacked. The facts soon confirmed his guess. In just a few minutes, the information Yi Xian needed was automatically imported into his mind by the communication system. At the same time, there was also an evaluation result of the internal star network of the Devil Emperor planet. The result given by the communication system was very simple, but the conclusion was very firm. Ordinary star network system. Can be connected. Can be merged. Risk probability. Less than 0. 1%. The risk probability was less than 1 in 10,000. This was clearly a rhythm that could destroy the other party at will. Yi Xian immediately grinned and at the same time, quickly flipped through the information received in his mind. After confirming the location of the Devil Emperor planet,